some of those raised, but my talk today directly speaks to some of those issues you brought up yesterday. So it felt great to see him pave that road. So that was nice. Those issues, things like CBDCs and all the really horrendous things that are coming at us at 1,000,000 miles an hour right now. And we don't really have a good way of dealing with it, or at least an obvious way of dealing with these issues. But these are things I've been concerned about for the last 30 years. 30 years ago, I asked myself a question I couldn't answer. And I love questions I can't answer because then I have to do a deep dive. And I love doing deep dives. So the question was, as a species, why can we not solve our fundamental problem? Why is it year after year after year we keep experiencing the same problems over and over and over again? And the premise was, we're not a stupid species. We do stupid shit all the time, fully granted, but we're not fundamentally do incredibly complex things on a daily from solving these problems. Something's in the way, and I didn't know what it was. That was a 10-year study, and for the first 5 years, I spun my wheels. I could not figure out what it is I was missing. I knew I was missing something, I just didn't know what it was. And I don't know. And in the 5th year, while I was reading stuff, someone passed me the writings of Steve Biko. Here, remember Steve Biko? Yeah, unfortunately, I'm lost to history. Steve Biko was an anti-apartheid activist in South Africa when the whole world didn't even know what apartheid was. It was not known around the world. It was a South African problem. And so he was black. He was living in the slums, but had some education. And he was, so I was reading some of his writings that were passed to me, and I came across a quote in his writings. And as soon as I read that quote, it hit me like a ton of bricks. That's what I was missing. And the quote was, "The power of the oppressor lay in the mind of the oppressed." What it told me was I didn't understand power. And because I was taught in school, like all of us, that, oh, power is taken, right? Hitler took power. Mao Zedong took power. Stalin took power. No, not a single one of them ever took power. And so I started studying about power, and very shortly I read another quote that said that in all of history, power has never been taken, power is always abdicated, power is given up. It's not taken, it's given up. And our systems are very good at us giving up our power. We go into a little box every few years, put a check mark beside a name, and we're just giving away our power. And that system says, now go away. Fuck off. We don't need you anymore, right? That's a terrible way to run a system. And we abdicate our power, and that power is used for all sorts of nasty things on a regular basis. So we have to rethink all of this. This is problematic. So I've looked at what those problems were. There are two fundamental primary problems in the world, and we're going to address them. And to solve these problems, we need this. We need wisdom. See, we don't have wisdom in our society. It's not encouraged in any way. We have no process to encourage wisdom. Why? And this quote says as well, it says, "And no society wants you to become wise. It is against the investment of all societies. If people are wise, they cannot be exploited. If they are intelligent, they cannot be subjugated, they cannot be forced in a mechanical life to live like robots. They will have the fragrance of rebellion around them. In fact, a wise man is a fire, alive, a flame. He would rather die than be enslaved." That's wisdom. But why don't we have wisdom in building in our society? Because wise people are creative, and creative people change things. And systems, our societies, don't want to change. They just want to keep doing what they're doing. So, of course, it's not going to encourage wisdom. Now, it's not that wisdom building can't be done. It absolutely can be done, and it's been done all throughout history. Our societies, systems protect themselves not by hiding things, simply by not talking about them. As long as it's not talked about, then it just disappears from our experience and our memories. And that happens all the time. So it's not hard to learn this stuff. We've got to take the effort to do so. It's all in the background. Most people I talk about these processes say work, right? Yeah, it's working all around the world. Again, we're not aware of it. The system doesn't talk about it. Rather talk about bad things and wars and conflicts and all these things distract us from what's really important, which is how we function as human beings. So we need things like self-governance. And community self-governance is building rapidly. And we're going to talk about those formats. It's spreading. People are dissatisfied with the current system. Our governments, we know, have partisan politics and special interests and corporate money, increasing corruption, and a really nasty the WEF, but it's on many other levels. That's just the visual side of things. People are looking for progression, change, right? That will bring you change. We don't need change. We need progression. We need to become better, to evolve. Okay, so when I did my 10-year study, I looked at, I basically followed every single issue I could, every single problem, looked at the source of the problem, the source of the source of that problem, and the source of the source of the source. If you follow all these problems to their sources, it comes down to two fundamental source problems. And until we actually address and solve those two source problems, because we haven't fixed the upstream problem, right? If there's poop coming down the creek, if you're scooping out poop, that's fine. You're going to be scooping out poop for the rest of your life until you go upstream and find out who's putting the poop in the stream, right? So we have to go to those two source problems. The first one, because we're in crypto, most of us are very aware of the debt-based monetary system, and Richard spent a good amount of time talking about that yesterday. That is a fundamental problem. The fact of creating a unit of currency with a debt is insanity. It is literally the definition of insanity. And every single theological book in the world warns against it, and we do it every day. We've got to solve it, right? Now, when I realized that debt-based monetary systems were the problem, and I looked for solutions, it didn't take very long to see, yeah, the solution to a debt-based monetary system is a credit-based monetary system. It simply means creating units of currency without a debt. You just create the currency, but you don't loan it into existence, creating a debt. That makes no sense. It's absolute insanity. So to solve it, we just create money, but without debt. Right? Now, of course, we have to put some bounds on that, and we'll talk about that. So I studied the 4,000 complementary currencies that existed, and this was 8 years before Bitcoin. They're all over the world. They still are. I just came from a 10-year anniversary of a community currency that was created in Mexico, one of a number of community currencies, and this one had been running for 10 years and is doing very well. There's many of these all over the world. That's a good thing. Now, they had scaling issues, though. There was a problem there about scale and about distribution. So I studied that very closely. And then while I'm studying that, Bitcoin shows up on the scene. And I studied Bitcoin at the end of 2011, got into it in 2012 early, because realized, yeah, there's a credit-based monetary system. And it solves the debt-based monetary system quite a bit to the 80% mark. That's good. but it's still missing the last 20%. That's key. And until we solve that last 20%, we have not solved the debt-based monetary system problem. So we still need that last 20%, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it's a good start. And then we had 20,000 plus other altcoins, which also have the same problem. They haven't solved the last 20% of the debt-based monetary system. That is coming. That has to come. Second part, the second biggest problem in the world is hierarchical governance. The idea that we need leaders and politicians when we absolutely do not. They serve a purpose. I'm not saying we have to just chuck that whole system. When it does good, let it do good. If your government is good at collecting garbage, let it collect garbage. That's a good thing. But when it fails any other issues or does not perform to what the people need or want, then it's up to the people to make the decisions, not our governments. Our governments are just employees. It's absolute insanity that we ever call any politician a leader. They're not our leaders, they are our employees. If you own a shop and the cashier is not performing his job, and you go to him and say, you're not performing your job, well, I don't have to because I'm your leader. Yeah, how long is he going to last? You're just going to give him the boot. Why aren't we doing that for these politicians? Right? We are in charge, but we've been convinced not to think of ourselves as in charge. This is the problem. And hierarchical governance protects the first problem. It protects the banks that do the debt-based monetary system. And it protects that system quite a lot. So that has to change. Okay. Now, we need this to be a consistent thing. The answer to into hierarchical governance is non-hierarchical governance, and those systems exist just like in the monetary system. I studied all those various different formats. Almost all of the best formats come under the term of deliberative democracies. They're very powerful. And they do tremendous things, and they are happening and growing at an accelerating rate around the world. So this is a good thing, but again, we don't hear about it. But those systems right now are a little big and clunky. They need to be modified. They need to become consistent and applicable on an everyday basis for everyone if we are going to make those changes to a better system. It's the same thing with say, cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, right? What we do have with Bitcoin, we have that anyone can use it on any day, absolutely. But we don't have everyone using it every day. Now, Bitcoin's working towards that, but it never truly solves it because of the last 20%. Okay, now for getting communities to become or at least addressing their issues directly, they need process. Everything we do needs process. People don't believe that their communities can self-govern because they don't have process. They have that process of electing their officials, but that's it. So that's the only process they're familiar with. That's the only thing they keep doing over and over again. We need that fundamental process. It has to make us politically autonomous. It has to involve wisdom building, making people wise. Now, what is wisdom, right? We need a good, solid definition for wisdom. The best definition I've ever seen says that wisdom is a human psychological trait that is composed of two fundamental components. The first component is insatiable curiosity. A wise person wants to learn and learn and learn and learn. But so does an intellectual. An intellectual wants to learn and learn. But there are plenty of intellectuals who are not wise. And that's where the definition doesn't complete for wisdom, right? So to be wise, you need a second component. And that second component is humility. A wise person says, even though I know so much information and I'm learning so much more, I can be wrong on anything and I am prepared to be wrong. That's where wisdom kicks in. It's about the idea of being humble in what you know and being prepared to be wrong. Okay, so in order to do that, part of the process requires that we research things, we consult on things, and we deliberate on things. This is why deliberative democracies are so powerful, because they are wisdom-building formats. That makes the difference. We have to be united in our decision-making so that we show that we can actually make those decisions. And it has to be very high-quality decisions. And that process has to be fully transparent. It has to be fully clear and participatory and fully documented, so that if it's ever questioned, you can show how the decision was done in a proper manner. Cannot be challenged. And for economic autonomy, right, this is the last 20%. The last 20% is community currencies. The thing I love about Bitcoin is it gave us so much power as individuals, because now we have a way of storing value that cannot be taken from us. We have to abdicate it. We might be forced to give it up, but we have to be forced. As long as I keep those numbers in my head or somewhere that it cannot be stolen from me, I own that value. That's powerful. That's what I love about Bitcoin. But the problem about Bitcoin, the 20% we're missing, is who creates it. And the same with the 20,000 other altcoins, right? They're either created by an individual, a group of people, an organization, or a company. That's all the 20,000 plus coins out there, including Bitcoin. But what is money for, right? Money is for communities. Money is for tracking productivity within communities. That's all it's supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about speculation and all the other things. It's about usage and how it's used, right? To track productivity. That's where Richard was talking about. You could just have a spreadsheet, right? I would even take that analogy further. I would say, if you talk about bills that we pass among ourselves, that is a spreadsheet all cut up into its individual boxes. And we're just passing those around. So that's the first decentralized currency. It's just paper notes. It's a decentralized system because we just pass it around among ourselves, right? And it's tracking productivity. The problem, of course, is the debt attachment, right? Got to get past that. So if it's credit-based, and we get communities to create their own currency, now they're autonomous. They can create money to pay for whatever productivity is required within the community. That becomes powerful. Because now there's no community that can say, well, we can't fix the roads because we don't have enough of this. We can't have a better water system. We can't do this or we can't do that because we don't have enough of this. Well, why not? It makes no sense that we don't have enough of this, because all it's supposed to do is track productivity. It shouldn't be a scarce resource. It should be available to track productivity. So if it creates its own currency, it could just create it any time it wants to pay for the things that need to be done. It's actually not difficult, and that's the whole premise of community-based currencies. So Richard talked about community banks. I think we need to extend that a little bit to say it's the communities that have to be the bank. And the whole community makes the decisions about what that bank does and how the currency functions, or grows, or changes, or adapts, but tailored to the community. And then, of course, exchanges will come up when they do that. So these self-governing processes, they can make decisions on policy, they can make decisions on infrastructure, on health and wellness. And something new that we're just experimenting with right now is we can actually use these processes on a larger regional basis as a preemptive form of truth and reconciliation. That's a whole other discussion, but I'm really excited about it, and it looks like we're going to be able to pull it off because it actually does work. So let's get into the process of self-governance using a deliberative democracy model with wisdom. Okay? First of all, there has to be a full spectrum investigation. I've worked with government. I know I've worked with politicians, and I know how they generally function. They get a portfolio, they read it for a few hours, they consult on a couple of their favorite experts, and then they make a decision. That's not a full spectrum investigation. No, you need to really study the issue and the subject. But we can't do that with politicians. Why? Because those politicians, we vote a person into office to deal with 100,000 issues. That's insane. Any one of us can't deal with 100,000 issues. We can't deal with 10,000 issues. Sometimes we can't even deal with a few hundred issues, right? But we do that. We expect this person to deal with thousands and thousands and thousands of issues. No, we need to flip the table. We need a multitude of people dealing with one single issue at a time. Put all that brain power to come up with the best possible solution. That's a much better strategy of solving problems. And so how do we do that? Well, first of all, we can't do this wisdom building process with an entire community. Let's say Mallorca. Anyone know the population of Mallorca? About 1 million? Ooh, wow, it's a good large amount. Okay, 1 million people in Mallorca. You can't take 1 million people and put them through a wisdom building process. It's just too uncoordinated. What you can do, though, regardless of the amount of people, you can do what's called sortition. Sortition is just a big fancy word for random selection. That gives you a representation of the cross-section of voices of the community. This is useful because they really do represent the different ideas and focal points of the community. Can't be too little because you don't get a good model or representation. Can't be too many because then it gets unwieldy. We find that usually anywhere between 50 and 200 people is the sweet spot. And you would adjust that to the complexity of the issue or the amount of people they're representing. Could be a number of factors in there. But it's a start. So you find your right amount of people, let's say 100, 150 people, and you put them through a wisdom building process. What's that process look like? Well, that's where we go to what's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Some of you probably are very aware of it. It's a very famous study, but it's kind of infamous. Some people know it, some people don't. I'll tell you how it works. It's very, very simple. Dunning and Kruger took a group of people off the street, and they would sit them down and teach them on an issue, on a subject, for about 20 to 30 minutes. That's it. And then they would test them. Buried in the test was a question that said, how much do you think you know about the subject now that you've been taught? And most people said 80 to 90% in 20 to 30 minutes. They said, okay. And then, without telling them, they brought them back and taught them on the same issue for another 3 to 4 hours on that same subject. And then they retested them, and buried in the questions was, how much do you think you know about the subject? And most people said 20 to 30%. So they went from a half hour of exposure to the subject to 3 to 4 hours of exposure, and they dropped their estimation of how much they knew about the subject from 80, 90% down to 20, 30. Why? Because they became humble. They realized that they had an opinion when they first came in, and the little bit of training they got at first said, well, your opinion still holds, so you're pretty good at it. But when they got the excess training, my opinion doesn't hold up anymore. And they became humble. And careful and really thinking about things. So that's the trick. That's the fundamental psychological trick that you can do in communities. So what you do is you take your random group, what I like to call the discovery group. The first step in a 3-phase process is to bring in experts on the subject they have to deal with. If it's water quality, road building, building declarations or policies or whatever, you bring in the experts on that subject. And not only do you teach them, but you teach them to the point where they can speak authoritatively on the subject. They can reel off facts, figures, stats, and history, anything about that subject. Now, I guarantee you've broken their opinion barrier. And that can happen over a 2, 3, 4-month period of teaching. They really become knowledgeable also become humble. Now they're wiser. Now they're really thinking. Once you've got their expert information all embedded, then you take them into public consultations. And you do public consultations because experts know expert information, but they don't know community. They don't know the flavor of the community. They don't know the details of the community. That has to come from the community itself. Now, the people who come and speak, they have access to what the experts say, so they can stay on topic and understand what they're talking about. Very useful. Now that this discovery group has all the expert information, all the public consultation information, then they go into deliberations. They argue for the best solution they can see from their point of view and try to come to a consensus, a win-win situation for the community. Okay, so now they come up with their solution, but, and this is the most important part, they don't get to decide. They don't get to implement. Why? Because they are a randomly selected group of individuals. So just like a politician, they could be bribed, they could be threatened, they could be cajoled. They could have internal biases that don't represent the community, so that you don't want them deciding. What they get to do is publish. They create a document with all the expert in, what they learned from the experts, what they learned from the community, how they came to their solution. They put together a proposal to the community with timelines, budgets, everything to actually implement, and they publish. Now the whole community gets that transfer to communities learning and becoming wiser. And then they have a referendum, but not the way we do referendums today, which is just opinion bashing. A politician's, well, here's a question, and I pretty much know what the answer is going to be, and I can use a lot of tools to manipulate that answer because it's all just opinion bashing. No, now you've got a wise population making a proper decision and deciding whether that solution makes sense or not. Now, if they voted down in the referendum, that's a good thing. Because obviously the decision didn't register with the community, didn't resonate, right? So that's a good thing. And then they go through the process with another group and see if they come up with a better solution. But if it does pass, and this is the beautiful thing, if it passes, no politician can stand against it because that politician has lost his mandate on the subject. Politicians aren't all powerful. We abdicate our power to them on any subject, but if the community comes together in a clear, transparent, fully participatory, fully documented process and come to a resolution, that politician has lost his mandate. He cannot challenge that. And that's how you get communities to bypass their political system, right? Tell the employee, you're wrong, we're right. And that becomes super powerful. Okay. This is the kind of full overall process. That wisdom building and process is all in here. It usually starts, though, with issue submission. You do a poll with the community to find out what is their most concerning issue, right? It's better to start with an issue that as many people are focused on as possible. Right. That part of the process is actually kind of fun because it really involves the community very quickly. Because the one thing that every single human being loves to do is complain. We're very good at complaining. And we can get a community involved very quickly when it starts complaining, but it knows its complaints are going to be addressed. Now there's engagement. And the community starts getting interested and exciting. You do your random selection, you take that group through that process, they publish back to the community, you hold your referendum. If the referendum doesn't hold, then it goes back through the process. If it does hold, then it goes through to implementation. Straightforward. Now, we recommend, we don't tell a community ever what to do. That's up to the community to make its own decisions. But we can make suggestions and recommendations. And one of the recommendations is create your own currency. Because if you use this process in either the first, second, or third iteration, if they create their own currency, they can now pay for these future processes. The people who are randomly selected, they get paid to go through this process. right? We pay politicians to make mediocre decisions. Let's pay our citizens to make good decisions, right? You can even pay for your votes. Doesn't matter what they vote, yes or no, but if you vote, you get paid. You get $2 for your vote. And the next issue, you get two more, whatever it is. Why not? It's a public service to vote. Yet in our silly system, we say, on your own time, drive out to the polling booth, stand in line, take your time in the rain, whatever it takes. Yeah, and you get nothing for it, right? In fact, you probably don't even get what you voted for. It's insane, right? So, yeah, you pay your people to actually make a vote. Why not? That's a good idea. Now, if you are paying people to make these votes, right? Whereas they feel like, how much longer are they going to vote for a politician if they start realizing that they can just make. Let's see. Oh. Curious though. Okay, just give me. And there's a lot more than that stuff into this. And these are all over the world, right? Why aren't we hearing this? Because it's the system. So examples of those. These are this whole. We got that have happened in Belgium. Citizens Assembly. To see close in person. Because when I was studying in the early 2000s, started in 2000 and when in 2004, my provincial government announced that they were going to do a citizens democracy model, right? And I got to see that up close and personal. And what I saw was stunning. I saw average everyday people who at the beginning said, don't know if this is going to be useful or good or whatever, but we'll give it a try. And from the halfway point to the end point, interviews I did a year afterwards, they said it was one of the best ever done in their life, that it changed just into in the community doing this process made them realize that nothing gets done until you do it. Average everyday people. I have never seen any process so powerful. Right? So talk to me about it because I'm happy to talk about it. It's being used all around the world. This is a digital walkthrough that we built as an MVP. We're going to expand this into a complete system. Through this, we're going to be building. We have also going to be building academies to train coordinators. So we're raising funds right now for that if you want to participate or know people who want to get things done, because this actually makes positive, real progression for communities. It makes things happen. And in all honesty, these are some of the projects we're working on now. I've got a whole bunch of other ones I haven't put in the slideshow yet, at least another 20. This is snowballing very, very fast. So please, if you're interested in participating in any way, a coordinator or even just talking about it, come see me. There's so much. I've dedicated my life to this, so this is what I do all day. Have questions, come talk. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So if you have any questions, we will have later. Now there will be Rahim talking. He's going to tell us all about the Austrian School of Economics. So give him a warm applause, please. Möchtest du das Headset haben?
Oh, thanks for being here. All right, I won't tell you all. It'll be boring. Potentially, I try to keep it to what may be relevant to you. So let's start with typical innovation, I'd say, in the history of economic development. A typical innovation is a combination of various previous innovations in a new way, and usually combinations of innovations of different disciplines, different areas. And one of the ingredients in that recombination is Austrian economics. I think it's a particular product maybe of thinking. It was obviously an ingredient in the sense that it influenced Satoshi Nakamoto, and that it was an innovation on its own. Again, a recombination of previous innovations in many different disciplines, emerging out of the old Austro-Hungarian Empire, which of course had a kind of political concentration in Vienna, so it's sometimes referred to as the Vienna School. But of course, the Austro-Hungarian Empire had very little in common with the Austria of today, which is just a small remainder. So it's basically a large chunk of Central Europe, and it's a large chunk of Central Europe that in the 19th century showed very rapid modernization, but not an equal modernization. So it was concentrated on a small merchant elite with almost 100% economic liberty, zero taxes, because it was in the interest of the monarchy. And of course, we've seen that ever and ever again. That's usually the pressure from military technology that you realize, okay, you got to keep up. The empire was threatened because it was one of the less modernized structures, so it was it's basically bright people and figuring out that society in crisis means a few things. And it's not so dissimilar from our situation today. It means suddenly most people see a lot of uncertainty emerging, in the sense that the question yesterday, quo vadis, where do you go, or quo vadimos, where are we going, is really hard to answer, because almost everyone will give a different questions, and we have a very different normative overlay. We'll have different values. We'll realize there are very different interests clashing with each other. So I think they didn't have much hope in deliberation, as we've heard before. And even one Austrian political scientist came to the conclusion, okay, if you just put people together talking and deliberating, most people assume that over time they'll reach an agreement. But he said, no, it could be the opposite. It's the longer you talk to each other, the more you figure out that you have different interests. And of course, that could be the issue in a society with so much uncertainty. And for some, of course, they see the change and they say, okay, we're impatient. We're going to have more of the change. And others they say, oh my God, where is it going? We have to go back. And then you realize by talking to other people, okay, there is no common ground. It's utopian and illusionary to assume that we'll find one identity and one anticipation of the future that will bind us all, that we know where we come from and where we're going from, where we're going to. It's not only multi-ethnic, multi-religious empire in the old sense, it also shows a clash of different interest groups, and of course different interpretations of history, different interpretation of political systems, of their legitimacy, and so on. So it's chaos. Vienna is not only the capital of the Austrian School of Economics at the time, it's the capital of, one school of economic thought, 3 schools of psychological thought emerging, and Vienna used to be the capital of neurosis. So people going crazy, going literally crazy about increased uncertainty, think you can trust other people, you think that some are working against you, you are not sure where it's all heading, it's maybe some catastrophe. So the founder of Austrian economics, Karl Menger, throughout his life he discovered so much change, and he had very high hopes in the potential future emperor, Rudolf. who committed suicide because he was going crazy and he was frustrated by looking at reality, by realizing what's going on, where they headed. And Menger was very clear-sighted. Almost everything he anticipated happened. And that's the reason why in old age he was deeply pessimistic. He knew that he will not survive to see any change to the better. He knew for a while it's terrible, it may lead to catastrophe, it may mean the end of European civilization. And that was kind of the outcome of his thoughts. Fortunately, it didn't really pass. Unfortunately, I mean, if times are getting worse, then in the future, sometime they may get better again. And of course, that happened. Civilization didn't collapse, but we've seen the crazy 20th century. A lot was destroyed. It was one of the most terrible centuries in history. And out of that realization, there is all this skepticism and what I call realism and down-to-earth approach of the Austrian school. So it merges out of that, there's not one narrative, one certain narrative. You don't go for the clear-cut answers, you want to understand. And of course, you have an existential interest in understanding what's going on. And you don't go for the idealist interpretations. Idealism was the virulent strain of thought in Germany. A romantic idealism, it's in a sense you construct an artificial identity to combine everyone, so everyone goes along. Who don't go along, of course, you somehow eliminate them either in your picture of the world or then physically. It's this kind of realism, I think, that's at the basis of it. Realization of diversity of interest, diversity of perspectives of human beings, diversity, that uncertainty is really a crucial concept, and it's the one that's most crucial if you look at the future, which is most relevant to most people, and that it comes out of complexity, and you can see complexity rise in larger, more integrated society, and it leads to a humbling approach. And so in many traditions, in, for example, the Viennese School of Medicine, they came to similar conclusions and realizing the body is a very complex organism. So usually the best approach is not interventionism, it's helping the body heal itself. Of course, they were not anti-scientific in this school. They realized, of course, there are some need for interventions, but you're reluctant because you're humbled by the complexity, and ever more so, of course, the complexity of a modern society, integrated society, where cities are hubs of global economic exchange. Vienna was among the 5 most important cities in the world at the time, so it's like New York or Shanghai. Nowadays, it was at the forefront not only of economic development, but of scientific developments, cultural developments, and so on, while, of course, large parts were still feudal, agrarian societies, shocked by what happened. So out of this realism and appreciation for diversity comes one that matters, subjectivism. You realize you put yourself in the shoes of other people to understand how they work, and there's some basis to it. You lose the trust in kind of gathering facts, because you realize, in particular in history, it's all selective. It all depends on who's gathering the facts and what's the narrative they want to push. Most of history you can really trust because it's the history of the victor. It's the history of someone who is something, a narrative to construct, an identity to construct, a legitimacy to construct for systems. So you become skeptical. It's not that you're against history. You appreciate history, of course, and it emerges out of the appreciation of history, but you become skeptical about all kind of grand narratives and about the scientists and the philosopher kings and so on and so on. So that tradition disappeared to a large extent in Europe, as almost every other scientific and cultural tradition of the time. So of course Vienna today is very different. It's an open air museum, still very beautiful city, but there is almost no continuity in those scientific and cultural traditions. Started at the days, which is true for many European places, and just so much change that you wouldn't recognize culturally the cities again. You only recognize it from the houses that have survived the bombing of the crazy 20th century. Fortunately, it was not a one world government and not a one world peace that was achieved. So there was some diversity left and people could escape, they could move. And as with many traditions, many moved to the United States, other went to other places, South Africa, even Turkey for a time. Switzerland, Geneva became a very important gathering point for the economies of the Austrian school. But then in the US, it became a dominant strand again, but it had a very different context that they found there. It was not the same impression of like shared in society that you're in time of crisis. It was rather a peak of American dominance after the war, and you have the realization of the fragility of civilization, but you can gather a new hope. But you see that there are potential slippery slopes. And within the US, there emerges a tradition of being skeptical that we may do the same errors again in the US, even though it's the land of the free. We are not realizing it, but it's slippery slopes starting. And one of the bases was the criticism of entrepreneurs about the FDR, Roosevelt interventionism, planned economy, and the idea like that you just keep on going in kind of war economy, planning economic development, and then go from the height of the pinnacle of civilization as the US to interventionism and global interventionism, not only economic interventionism, but military interventionism, political interventionism all around the globe, without really appreciating the complexity, different cultures, and the whole complexity, of course, of a world system, which isn't really a system, but a complex organism. And out of that emerged a criticism of interventionism, and it became closely linked to the Austrian school. It could also adapt to a particular US tradition that was that monetary issues had been a debate for a long time. The US was an early on paper money experiment, the greenbacks and the continentals, and money played an important role in the history of political thought in the US. So there was a lot of reluctance against the central bank because there was a tradition of a kind of elite skepticism in the US. So they really needed a conspiracy to push it through. And only like the second or third effort then created a sustainable central bank by obfuscation and really outright conspiracy. And there was a tradition of money populism, which is like appealing to the people, and sometimes it was an easy money populism, sometimes it was an anti-elite, anti-bank, anti-central bank populism. And so an important student of Ludwig von Mises, Murray Rothbard, adopted this kind of populism. Okay, so the Austrian school in the US, I'd say, is a populist school, but let me explain it to you. Now, populism nowadays is perceived something negative, because we always assume that those who don't share our opinions are the populists. Of course, in a democracy, everyone is populist. That's the essence of that kind of democracy we have. It's like people making promises to interest groups and appealing to the interest groups of popular, because you want to have a large interest groups, and every party politician is a populist. What does populism as well is you appeal directly to the people, the lay people, not to an elite. And that was a part of realization that even in academia, not only in politics and in the media, there are gatekeepers. And you can either play along with those gatekeepers, or you realize maybe I have a better chance in reaching the open lay person, the business person who has a particular experience that maybe the professional politician or academic doesn't have. And he may understand even complex economic phenomena in a better way because they're more intuitive experiences. So that's the kind of populism Murray Rothbard went for. Originally, he thought he would go along with left-wing populists. That was his original idea, because starting from the 60s, there was the anti-Vietnam movement and so on against interventionism. So first, the criticism of global geopolitical interventionism came from the left, but then he realized, no, it doesn't really work that way. There's like, they are not really aware of what the interests at play are. And so he shifted gradually towards what we now would call right-wing populism. It's a misnomer, I'd say. It's within the tradition of anti-elite populism. That is quite an American tradition. Of course, it's an ambivalent tradition, but it means you try to bypass gatekeepers, and it's why many Austrian economists nowadays are reaching for more popular audiences. Both my teachers in the continuity of the Austrian school, Hans Hoppe, who was a student of Murray Rothbard, or his successor, and Roland Bader, who was a student of Hayek and his successor in Europe, both chose the populist way, which means they wrote books for larger audiences. They didn't write many academic papers, didn't go for academic careers in the narrow sense, getting as many citations as possible and prestige university posts, but reaching a larger share of people. Of course, it seems to be at odds with what it originally was. It was a reaction to be value neutral, because you realized we won't reach an agreement on values. We're just due to uncertainty, because we don't know how the future will affect our interests. So some are wary, some are hopeful and want to increase the speed and can really wait for where it's going, and others are very reluctant and want to fight something. And it's the reason you can really go for the values. And usually if people talk about values, a lot of bullshit that you just want to say, okay, cut the bullshit. Let's talk about interests. That's more realistic. Let's talk about your incentives, but cut the crap of the values you're talking about. But usually those people who appeal the most to values, who want to be the most altruistic and for everyone, usually try to conceal something. And it's this realism led to a lot of paradoxical insights within the Austrian school, and even a paradoxical insights about economists. Realized early on that there's really a danger in economists. It's maybe a similar one you see with doctors and almost every kind of elite class that can conceal its own interests. And what's the problem with economists? If we look at it with the most prevalent modern methodology, which is inductive, looking at the facts and do some econometric analysis of economists, we realize, looking at the predictions of economists, they are on average worse than rolling the dice. So it's a really bad idea to get economic advice from economists. Avoid that. This is a very paradoxical insight for an economist, of course, but it's this kind of realism you apply to everything, and then you realize, okay, there's a lot of paradoxes. So in many ways you realize causalities usually go the other way than most people assume. Things that seem obvious are not obvious at all. I think that's one of the conclusions. Then even it's not sure if an Austrian economist is an economist. Hayek thought you can recognize a good economist, that he's not only an economist, at least. He was the only Nobel laureate, of course, of the fake Nobel Prize funded by the central banks to push their kind of economics. And he only got it so that his left-wing eugenist radical Gunnar Myrdal wouldn't look that crazy that he got the Nobel Prize as well, because they went for the typical, we give it to a left-winger, but of course we are not biased, so we give it to a right-winger as well, to make it seem less crazy. That really crazy person got the Nobel Prize, which was Gunnar Myrdal, who was a statist, eugenicist from Sweden, all behind this kind of socialist intervention in families and even your reproductive decisions and so on. And he was the only Nobel laureate so far who said, okay, it's a really bad idea to hand out this kind of prize to economists, because you make it seem like as if we are physics Nobel laureate, which at least has been more of consensus and methodology. It's less politicized. I mean, it used to be at the time. Nowadays, you can't even be sure about physics. You get a politicization everywhere. And it's legitimacy. It's narrative production for legitimacies. So it's a very critical approach to the economics profession as well. And of course, one of the reasons why it isn't doing that well in academic economics, why it's considered either a pseudoscientific or very niche tradition, which is odd because it has all the background in various disciplines and was very at the state-of-the-art level in many disciplines at the time when it emerged, the Austrian school. So it has a very strong scientific background in various disciplines where representatives of the Austrian school were very early in adopting very important paradigms like evolutionary paradigms, complexity science paradigms, game theoretical paradigms, and psychological, in a sense, paradigms, and so on. So it's maybe a difficult picture and story. I think it's not at all, or not too much different from the Bitcoin story. Bitcoin, of course, as well, is very different things at the same time. It's a gradual process where it may change the relative importance in certain aspects and respects. And it's a humbling experience, as I think the Austrian school is, because you realize in the best sense it's not a list of certainties, it's a protocol, a software to think about the world and gradually come closer to reality and understand what's going on. And that, of course, is a humbling experience. So, thank you so far. I hope I've given you a good idea. If any of you speak German, I can only invite you, if you are interested in that tradition in its very original, interdisciplinary, practical-oriented approach, I offer at the Scholarium in Vienna, of course also in the distance, a way to get acquainted with the tradition, to learn from it, to continue it. So that's an open invitation. You can find out more about it at scholarium.at. And for anyone else, I'm looking forward to questions or discussions, maybe at the panel then. Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Rahim. So as said, afterwards we have the Q&A session with him. So remember your questions. And now a good friend is going to give a talk. Josh, please come up to the stage. And his talk is going to be about how the rich using inflation to get rich. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's a beautiful day outside. There's freaking pools and beaches. Listening to us and stuff inside is very much appreciated. And I promise I won't strike a pose and do a Madonna dance with my new microphone here. I'll save you guys from that. Man, what is going on? Dancing. I'll try again. Hang on. It's kind of bouncing about here. Have a look. It's kind of readjusting.
Switch screen to.
Don't save. Let's try again.
No signal?
Yeah, see, bounces between resolutions or something.
Yeah, it's trying to connect.
Technical issues. Please feel free to stretch. Let's see here. Is there like a resolution? You know your way around these crazy things.
Please.
Fill in. Wow, that's wild. Maybe a switch to like display. Maybe that's. Huh? Yeah. Maybe there's like a HDMI. I mean, like a
USB-C, HDMI. Do we have a USB-C? That's when I plug this in. Maybe I'll just do a We're here, we did it. Again, thanks everyone for sticking by us. So yeah, my talk is kind of solving inflation and what the wealthy do. I'm going to take you down, take this glass mushroom and take you down a trip of what we do and how the wealthy will basically use inflation all the time. You know, the normal person when they go to a bank and they take a loan out, they don't really get any benefits apart from massive fees and charges and interest. And of course, this is difficult because you have interest, you have all sorts of things that are fighting against you, and then inflation is like the thing that nobody really, we talk about it in crypto, but normal people don't really talk about it. But the first thing people would say, oh, how do you make money during inflation? Well, start a business, maybe? Is that the way? You start a very successful business and you get higher than inflation. Yes, I can do it. Geez, that's hard. There's all sorts of, we saw some great talks this morning about business risk being a cost that's quite unquantifiable. You have then interest because businesses usually take out loans or they get investment. So a business is obviously one way to go, and it's fine, but it's a very hard way to go. If you have capital, maybe one thing you want to do is borrow, because if there's a high inflation, well, you want to short the thing that's being inflated away. If something's losing value, well, you want to go short that thing. So borrowing is obviously a great way to go. The thing is, the normal person, when they go to their bank and say, I want to borrow some money and I want to buy a property so I can, have something that's solid, that's against, fights against inflation, so hedge against inflation. They say, okay, well, give us, 5% inflation, 5% interest at a variable interest rate. That's what we're going to give you. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, no, what if we make it a fixed interest? I say, well, okay, all right, we'll do that for you. But if the economy collapses, there's usually a nice little clause that says we'll reevaluate the loan. So the very wealthy, of course, have a lot more leverage with the bank manager. And they can go to the bank manager and say, okay, I want a deal. I want a fixed interest, and I want the clause that says you'll reevaluate the loan if there's a massive hyperinflation. You'll just strike that out, and I'll just keep paying that. And I say, yeah, sure, okay, let's do that. So they get these deals. But the normal person doesn't. That's generally how it works. So how do you borrow on good terms? How do you borrow on better terms? And really, the problem is you can't. And this is one of the beautiful things about crypto and Bitcoin and DeFi and all these wonderful things, is that we can build these mechanisms now. And that's something we've been working on at the Standard, is to build that. Now, I saw multiple problems in this space. One of them, we ran the first Bitcoin physical gold exchange. We built it in 2014 and launched it in 2015. And one of the things I noticed in about we were paying everyone in Bitcoin, like freelancers and stuff in Bitcoin, and then when Ethereum got launched later, some of them asked for that, and sometimes in Litecoin. But then a marked thing happened around 2020. People just started asking for stable coins, being paid in stable coins all the time. And I was like, why do you want this crappy US Tether thing? What are you serious? Have we lost our minds? And really the answer always came back, my accountant's going to kill me if I again give them an invoice in Bitcoin. It's all over the place, and I have to calculate this and the losses and this and that, and there's a gray zone, and we don't know where you're going to be. So that's why. And okay. And then I gave a talk in 2019 about at LabBitConf about stablecoins, and specifically algorithmic stablecoins, and how these things, they're kind of cool because the idea is nice. We have now a decentralized stablecoin, but it's a complete nightmare, and it's a farce, and it will fail. And one of these will get extremely large, and they will fail. And Terra Luna just released their paper, and I said, man, this is going to fail like the rest of it. And it wasn't like I'm some genius. I'd seen BitShares, I'd seen all of these projects that had tried algorithmics before, and they all failed. So I looked at what Maker was doing with MakerDAI, and it's brilliant. It's really, really nice, because you're taking something like debt, and you mentioned debt before, but I don't think it's only to do with debt. It's if money is created with interest in the beginning, Yeah, that if base, like, there's nothing fundamentally a problem with interest. If I lend you something, I have opportunity cost, I'll charge you something. But the base level of money, the core invention, the way it gets minted, if that has interest attached, it's just all wrong. So Maker has this protocol where you can lock up assets. You know, the gold standard, the government would lock up gold and issue credit on that, and it would equal the 1 gold. Well, in DeFi, we can do it, but decentralize it, right? Everyone can lock up crypto in these smart contracts. That's what Maker invented. And there was a few people that were also around. But Maker, where you could lock up some Ethereum and mint DAI against it. And you mint less value than there is locked up. And so you're still holding your private keys. It's brilliant. You're holding your private keys, you lock it up, and you mint some crypto against it. The problem we have there is, you know, it's on Ethereum. A lot of Bitcoin maxis will say, oh, it's Ethereum. But I'm a big fan of let's just build and let's not use these centralized authorities. I know we have a centralized exchange, Vaultoria.com, and that's that. But really, we want to get away from it. We saw FTX. We saw Mt. Gox. We keep seeing these exchanges being fucked and destroying shitloads of value and lives, destroying lives at the end of the day. So we want to get towards where you can lock up real world value and borrow. So one problem with Maker is that they charge an interest fee, even though they create the DAI out of thin air against the value of what you've locked up. So the other thing is if you've got a whole lot of value locked up in these vaults and you've borrowed against them, and it collapses, then you get liquidated. Your loan gets liquidated. So we really tried to work on that as well. But really the answer is to be your own bank, to lock up assets in your own smart contract instead of trusting a bank like FTX and anything like that, and lock your own assets up and borrow against them at 0%. Borrow from yourself. And so this is the New World disorder. I'll show you a little demo now of what we've built. So the standard, what we've done is we've focused on a couple of things. It's a next generation. It is built on top of Arbitrum on a layer 2 on Ethereum. But I'm really hoping that we will be able to bridge Bitcoin. Our first thing is to have wrapped Bitcoin as a collateral type. But the main focus that we've really worked on is 0% interest on borrowing. You can borrow as for as long as you want. You don't have to trust anybody because anyone can build an interface to this, to our smart contracts. And we don't have access, no one has access to this apart from the user. The other thing is collateral management. If you lock up a whole bunch of assets and you've borrowed against them and you've lost your job and you're like, oh, there's so much money locked up there, but I can't pay it off and the market's shitting itself. It's just red, red, red blood. I'm going to get liquidated. What do you do? So we've really focused on building the contracts so you can still swap your collateral to another collateral type while it's locked. So you can't withdraw your collateral because you've borrowed against it, but you can swap it to something else like tokenized gold. Tokenized gold, while the whole market's bleeding, it'll hopefully be, you know, it's not a panacea. It might still go down. But generally, gold doesn't collapse 10% a day, like a lot of cryptocurrencies do. And on the same on the way up, if there's a coin that you really like, and you've locked some ETH, and you think Chainlink's going to go up or something, or Bitcoin, you can swap your collateral over to wrap Bitcoin. The other cool thing we've done is made every smart vault. So when you borrow yourself, you're creating this vault, and you can put multiple collateral types in this in one vault, and you can borrow against that. Now, if you've borrowed against it and you've lost your job and you want quick access to liquidity, every vault also creates an NFT, and the NFT is a dynamic NFT, which is also something we're pioneering, where it's an image, but the image pulls data from the blockchain because it's an SVG, and puts the data that's in that vault. So it'll put how much collateral is locked in that, and how much debt's been withdrawn. And if you can sell that NFT, because whoever has that NFT can then go and pay off that debt and withdraw the collateral. So you can start to build some other people can start building some tools where they can maybe borrow off the NFT, which represents the debt and the collateral and all these sorts of things. And we had similar tools in 2008, but in the banking system, except it's totally intransparent because they were locking up mortgage-backed securities and chopping them up and borrowing against those and getting corrupt rating agencies. Whereas with these NFTs, you can see down there and you can run some software and see exactly what's in there. So there's some really interesting stuff coming out. I'll show you a quick demo. So I'm going to log in now with MetaMask here. Let's hope it works. This is still on testnet, but so here we go. So the resolution here is kind of crappy. Thanks, Beamer. All right, so I'm going to create a new smart vault. So you click on this, you get this beautiful little thing here. MetaMask should pop up, and I create confirm. I create a transaction. Now it creates a vault on the blockchain. I've got the private key to it. Nobody else has. No one can take my collateral. I'm locking it up and borrowing against myself. So right now it's creating this vault. Got to wait for a confirmation. There we go. So here we are. This is our smart vault here. And first thing I'm going to do is deposit into it. So at the moment, this is all test data. So but this will show you what ETH has recently done. So I'm going to deposit some ETH. You'll be able to also deposit other things into your smart vault. Right now on the test net, it's ETH. So I'm going to look here at my MetaMask. I have 0.5. While I would have loved to build this on Bitcoin, if I went over to RTL or onto Rootstock, it's still an alt chain and there's no volume there. So that's why we chose to do over here. So right now, here we are. We've got 0.3 ETH in this contract that's valued at 500. My own money, yay! And we saw something about minting your own currencies. So this currency here is pegged to the euro. We're also going to release USD and all of these other synthetic assets, even pegged to gold and Tesla stock, anything eventually. But right now we're focused on S-Euro, then SUSD, British Pound, and we'll release more. So right there we go. We've just minted some S-Euro. Before that, I had 130. Now it's 230. Sorry, I should have showed that before, just here. So we've got 230. We can see here we've taken up, if 100% is how much I can borrow, I've borrowed 18% of how much. Now, you don't want to go all the way to 100 because the vault can liquidate. Now, that's the only time that others can get access to your collateral, because the smart vault will... the rule set is always that there has to be more value locked up in all of these smart vaults than there are debt in S-Euro, because S-Euro has to be transparently over-collateralized. We cannot trust humans, we have to trust code. And so anyone can look on-chain and see that there's more value locked up than there is stablecoins floating around. And what happens during a liquidation event, there's a liquidation pool where people put in S-Euro, and as soon as there's a vault liquidated, it's basically dumped down into those, and S0 is burned, and those assets are distributed amongst those people at 10% under market value, because you have to be 110% over collateralized. So 9.91% under market, under spot is what they'll get that for having that liquidation pool. But yeah, so now we have a debt-based economy here, but it's based on 0% interest, and it's provably over collateralized with everything from tokenized gold to Bitcoin, wrapped Bitcoin, and Ethereum. And the community will vote on other collateral types. So now we've borrowed that. We can go out. These are the different vaults. We're going to have things like the Argentinian peso. These currencies that are inflating like crazy. Hey, let's take out a loan at 0% interest in the Argentinian peso, and there's no time limit to pay this back. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's going up, Argentinian peso is shitting itself, and you go in a few years' time and pay your debt off, and basically the inflation's paid off because it's easier to get more pesos. So yeah, that's the plan. Here you can see our developer just updated the branch, so but you can see the NFT, which also gets created. Let's see. Here's one. There's no collateral in this one, but this data gets pulled from the chain. Sorry about the resolution here, but here you'll see all your collateral types that are in there, how much value there is, and how much debt you've taken out. And when you list that on OpenSea, someone can buy that and then access that debt, so that collateralized debt position. So we don't need no stinking banks. We can borrow from ourselves. We don't need them anymore. DeFi is really powerful, and even though a lot of people are like, oh, Bitcoin only, I cannot build this on Bitcoin. I can't do it. I want to figure out how to cross over to Bitcoin so Bitcoin can be part of this, but it can't. I have to use a side chain or something else on Bitcoin. But again, a side chain is just actually another altcoin. It's another chain. So, and the code that we're writing we'll be able to deploy once that technology becomes available on Bitcoin. We can hopefully deploy it on there. But right now, this is it. We're getting very close. It's been a long time because there's been, it's just hard to build this stuff. But I'm really, really happy with where we're headed. And if there's any questions, I don't know if there's time. Yeah, we'll do this after. All right, cool. But yeah, that's the standard how it is so far. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, remember your questions, please, for Josh. And now we have a talk from Spotty from Wasabi Wallet. So please give him a warm applause again. Okay. Yes, I will take it just
Stop and go to the toilet.
A Bitcoin company in the Bitcoin environment. But before that, let's hear about the protagonist of the story, me. So my name is Faragou Balázs. I'm 23 years old, and I work at Wasabi Wallet, which is a privacy-focused wallet, more on that later. And I would consider myself a beginner-level Bitcoiner. But what is a beginner-level Bitcoiner? I usually like to put Bitcoiners in 3 big groups. One would be the market level Bitcoiners who are aware of Bitcoin, but doesn't yet see the opportunity and the purpose of Bitcoin as a currency on its own in the future. They see the stock market way of Bitcoin. The second one is the beginner level Bitcoiners like myself who started contributing in Bitcoin in Wasabi wallet and actually is kind of getting there to understand more in depth. And the advanced level Bitcoiners who are contributing to Bitcoin for years now already, and you can actually have an in-depth talk with them. They are the Nicholas Doyers and the Peter Todds of our world, and probably hundreds more I could name if I wouldn't be a beginner level Bitcoiner. But I'm getting there, I promise, I'm on my way. So I graduated in middle school when I was 19, and after that I didn't go to university. I thought that university mostly maybe for people who have some brief idea about what they want to do in the future, what they want to be when they grow up. And so they go to university to learn more, to increase their knowledge base, and then the university can lay down some roads for them to choose from. Now, I knew exactly what I want to do. I knew exactly that I want to be a programmer. I want to be a developer since I was a very child. And so I didn't go to university. I actually went for a boot camp. It was a 1.5 year long programming course where I basically learned everything of what a company actually needs when they want to hire a developer, like version control, for example, which a lot of university doesn't teach you about. So I did this course. And after that, I went to an interview to Wasabi Wallet. They were like the sixth company where I went to, and they actually hired me. So since 2021, I am a Bitcoiner, so it's like 2 years into it. And what is Wasabi Wallet? It is a non-custodial, open source, and privacy-focused wallet, which you can access on your PC. You can download it on Windows, you can download it on Mac and Linux as well. And how they achieve privacy? Well, this is the very first thing that I had to learn when I actually arrived to Wasabi. So when I arrived at the office, 2021, March 1st, Nopara, Adam Fischer, was waiting for me. If you were here last year, you heard him speak, probably. He was there, he sat me in a couch and actually drew on the table something like this. A totally understandable, easily readable, perfect drawing about what a coin join is and what a problem there is I actually have to solve. Now, for some people who don't understand what is written here, come on, try better. It's totally understandable. Like, can't you see? No, like, it was really hard for me to understand. But it is the very basics of a coin join. What is a coin join? You briefly already heard about it at some other talks. It is basically a big transaction with hundreds of inputs where people put in their coins. And on the output side, the coins are getting mixed together. So you put in your coin on one side, you get your money back minus the fees. But the amounts are switched up. So you put in 1 Bitcoin on the other side, and you get back 0.5, 0.3, 0.2 minus fees. But the point is that there are hundreds of other people who are putting in their coins on the input side. So on the outside, you will not be the only one who will have 0.5. There will be like 50 other people. So your anonymity set will be 15. The anonymity set is basically the number of indistinguishable inputs on the output side. Now, it was kind of a lot for me at the very first day, because I am a newcomer to Bitcoin still to this very day. And it's not just the way that he told me what a coin join is. He immediately told me that there is a bug in the software. Because when you open the wallet, you will see that your anonymity set is like 10, for example. But after 10 seconds, it will go back to 1. So you will have 1 hour to fix this bug. Thank you. Have fun. See you later. Okay, I guess I had 1 hour. 1 hour to solve this issue. It took me 30 minutes to start the wallet, overall. And after another like 30 minutes, I saw one line in the code which said anon set equals 1. That might be it, maybe, probably. But after 1 hour, Nopara came back and he was asking like, so, did you finish? Did you solve the issue? Nah, I had no idea how to fix the issue. I was in shock. But at least I got somewhere with my colleague. And eventually Nopara told us that he didn't actually wanted us to solve this issue. It was probably an issue that for a newcomer, for a junior developer who has zero knowledge about Bitcoin, it would be almost impossible. For like a senior developer who actually knows something about coding or knows something about Bitcoin, it can take like some days to find the root of the issue. He was only curious about how I would actually start solving this issue. So he tested me. And of course, the bug was not on production side. It was just something that was on the master branch and eventually got fixed later on. So he was just curious about how I would start solving this. And he was curious about the three main skills that I think it's important. Your problem-solving skill, how will you actually start thinking about the problem? How would you start solving it? The confidence, you're not starting to panic. You're not jumping from line to line, one problem to another. You are going one by one, so you're not getting confused on your own. And of course, the third one, using Google. I'm finding my developers, fellow developers in the crowd. You are using Google. Everyone is using Google. We all know there is a problem. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just need to rephrase it, put it in Google. Someone on Stack Overflow probably solved it for yourself. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, as I said. Using Google is actually very important that I had to learn. In the school that I was learning programming, there was actually a 1 week long topic about how to use Google correctly. You will be shocked about how hard it is for some people for actually use Google. So this is how I started contributing to Bitcoin. But for someone who doesn't know Bitcoin at all or doesn't know developing, how would she or he start contributing to Bitcoin? For them, I would say if you have zero idea about Bitcoin or economics or anything, maybe the Bitcoin Standard book could be a good way to start if you have zero idea about any of these. Or if you know something about Bitcoin, but you're more into development, more likely, there is a really good GitHub book written by Nopara and Nicolas Dorier, Programming the Blockchain in C#. It is a very interesting read. That's where I started my development in Bitcoin. Indian YouTubers, the best. They helped me through the school. They are really cool and really great. And I would also say that like almost everyone in the Bitcoin community is there to help. They all have one great goal. They are all here to solve the big world problems, to solve money, to fix it. I mean, we are still going to one direction. There might be different roads, and they are here to actually help you to choose the perfect road for you, how to contribute to Bitcoin. So here I am, 2 years in Bitcoin, and I'm still learning. I still feel like that I don't know enough. But like, is that actually surprising? It's just like the IT world. It's ever growing. It's getting better. It's getting different. New BIPs are getting introduced. It's ever changing. There are infinite possibilities on where to and how to improve Bitcoin. So it's not really a surprise that I still feel like I don't know enough. But it's not like it will not change. It will just take time. It will just take ambition. And for someone who wants to contribute to Bitcoin and actually make this whole project a better thing, I would say that all you need is ambition. And this is the most My Little Pony-like plot twist ever. All you need is love. It's friendship. That's the answer. But for real, ambition. One day you wake up, one leg after another, you stand up and you say, yes, today I will read that book. I will contact someone on email. I will join a Slack group or a Telegram book. I will open an issue on GitHub. I will start looking into it. And once you start looking into it and you get a brief understanding how Bitcoin actually working on the economic side, on the development side, it's your choice. One day a wave will come and the wave will take you and you get on your surfboard and you just go along with it. It will be jiggly at the very beginning, but if you're standing still on it and you're going hard to the very beginning, it will take you so far. It will take you to the moon and beyond. And that's exactly all. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. And we maybe need like 2-3 minutes and we're going to set up the panel now for the questions. Boring question, denied. Okay, next question. Okay.
Hi, Don. Thank you very much for showing your presentation. I really love to see that you're also representing how democracy can be reformed to, because a lot of people have a lot of disappointment, I think, in that area, even going so far, seeing voting as a danger, which I don't think is not a good direction. So I really like seeing this, like how communities can organize and have the freedom to organize. You were saying, just a little detail, you were saying that the presentation from Richard yesterday, he was very explicit that he needs credit-created money to create growth, while you were saying like, we don't want credit-created money. Did you saw a little bit there? Because something I think is not completely aligned here.
Yeah. That's because we're using kind of the same term in two different ways. When I'm talking about a credit-based monetary system, it simply means that you're creating money without debt at the point of creation. It's the point of creation that's very, very important. He was referring to something completely different. The debt-based monetary system is the fundamental problem, and it's solved by creating money without debt, not loaning it into existence. Exactly. Because when you loan it into existence, then while that unit of currency is going throughout the economy, the debt is growing and growing and growing. If a bank is just loaning money to an individual, that individual's debt is growing, but it's kept to that individual. It's not kept to the society. And so when you create currency with a debt at the point of creation, and that's just growing throughout the lifespan of that unit of currency, that's where the real problem is.
Rahim, can you confirm? Because I was really thinking that when the individual goes to a bank, there's also money creation is happening by debt.
Don is using debt-based and credit-based in a very idiosyncratic way. Yes. The Austrian approach would differentiate between credit-based, is what he's calling debt-based, and token money, which is what he's calling credit-based money. Richard was not about, I mean, it's entirely obvious, but it's credit. It's a credit system he's talking about. It's about loans. It's about industrial loans to companies. Yes. And then, of course, the question is, what kind of community banking can you have? What's a community? That's not obvious. The most communities he's referring to are fairly small, to a large extent, I say, rather intentional communities or traditional communities.
Countries, oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't have to be just a single village or town. You can actually create, so the currency I went to its 10-year anniversary, that actually is encompassing 26 and 5C. So no, it's not, it doesn't have to be just small.
That makes it very unlikely, you know. I mean, the condition for a community to work, in particular, if you have deliberative processes, is a kind of homogeneity of interests, values, preferences. Otherwise, I mean, very few, if you try to set up communities from the start, and I appreciate that you're not just about intentional communities, just the experience. I mean, we had a historical lab for community creation, which was the US. Early on, a lot of space, rather space, but for the sake of abbreviation, it more or less was, or considered available space, and it was used for plenty of community experiments, and almost all failed. The subsection that survived is almost without exceptions religious communities, and the reason for the survival of religion means binding yourself to certain values and certain preferences, and that even that doesn't usually work out, but it works out in those cases. Now, putting that together, you want to have a process that's working, and you want to have a circular economy that's working. I'd be fairly skeptical, as Mises was one of the first to write about token money and really differentiate it, and did the similar differentiation. He didn't say it's theoretically impossible. He was just very skeptical. And the reason is for that you create a credit in your, I mean, be it S euro or C euro or just a beer or whatever kind of coupon. What are you doing with that money? You may assume, okay, we're all circular, everything we need can be found within the community, which is a very unlikely situation. Now, in particular nowadays, most of construction, investment, development will have to bring in outside resources, access to outside capital goods, people, and so on. And there you find problems. And that, of course, with almost all surviving circular economy tokens, is that they are fairly small part of very localized people. Basically, local businesses accept it as a part of the payment usually, but it can't really be used as a productive credit for a company that wants to develop. And usually, because development usually means you're looking for markets outside of the village. It's very hard to get a business started with that kind of division of labor and specialization we have nowadays with just a local community market. Of course, you can now abstract the community idea to a whole nation, a whole thing. I would advise against that because usually, I mean, I think the historical experience, that's a dangerous assumption to make, that you can have on the large scale the same kind of democratic structures, taking turns, identifying yourselves, and not have the hidden interest fights that we've come to assume is what party politics is about. But the reason is that there are really opposed interests and there's lack of trust, and you just try to get away with whatever you can get away with, and that's why you need to have all the control and so on, and it makes it fairly difficult to have kind of circular economy logic.
The thing is with the credit-based ones, I think, you know, one of the reasons I found Bitcoin quite early was in 2001, I ran the first swap site where people were swapping clothes, right? Because I thought, we got to get it from banks and all this stuff. And I really quickly realized that we need some sort of token in the middle, because if I hate your shirt, but you love mine, that deal falls through. Yet I also be in the, so I could like give you a token and then you can, but then how do I issue that? How many do I break? Full circle to be a central bank again, and then being a human, I become corrupt and greedy and everything else. So there's that, but then there's also other ways of debt where someone might babysit, and you see this in small communities. I'll babysit for you, and I get like a little plastic ring for that time that I've spent, and give it to you. And now that's a debt. There's no interest, but it's a debt in a way because you owe me some time to babysit my kid next time. So it's still a money or a currency, but it's debt. So I think there's fundamentally something wrong with it. And I think it's a misnomer as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there was ever really a time where we traded shells for bananas. It was always, I'll give you some bananas. Here, you owe me now some debt. And we symbolize that debt in a way. Right.
So exactly, and even that's a misnomer, because the word interest actually doesn't apply to usury. What we're really talking about is usury, and somehow, magically, the word usury has disappeared from the context. Why? Because every theological book in the world warns against usury, and the bank said, well, we can't use the word usury, let's use something else. And, we have this thing called interest, exactly. And interest was actually a term used as an administrative cost to write the contract. That was it. It was a one-time payment. It wasn't this compound interest concept. So they just twisted that language. And that's where we get stuck. We get stuck on the idea of credit and debt and the rest of it. When we talk about community currencies, yes, you can call them a circular economy within the community, but they're not standalone systems. They're called complementary systems. You can still have a sort of fiat currency, or you can have a much larger scale credit-based monetary system, meaning it doesn't come with an interest rate or anything like that. So those can work when you're moving the value that's been created within the community. community and you need some outside resources, you can either balance out with a fiat currency or an external currency, or you can use an intermediary currency like Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. That's actually very, very useful. It's the intermediary currency. Exactly. And then also what you're going to have is you're going to have entrepreneurs who are going to say, well, this community has its money that's useful in that community, and this community has money within that community. I'll create an exchange. I mean, this is exactly what we did with the 20,000 altcoins out there. Somebody just says, well, I'll create the exchange. I'll be the middleman, and happy to do so. That's going to happen no matter what.
So is that what your main worry is, liquidity amongst smaller community funds who have smaller liquidity interfacing to the wider world for these large liquidity and being able to like bully them around by manipulating the price through the larger ones?
It's one of the worries, liquidity or salability. I mean, we had a lot of token experiments, and it's the idea that you can just create wealth by producing a token is odd. It's all about the salability of the token then, because I mean, we need to be realistic. It's a company getting a credit in S euro. What are they doing with that? Okay, are they able to spend it on the people they recruit? I doubt so. If it doesn't get traction on its own, and that's a different aspect and has certainly nothing to do with community.
But they can trade it. So they'll trade it for something that is more like, I don't know, like right now DAI is quite big.
I mean, we see it's we are in 2023, it's not 2017. So lots of experiences with DAOs and token schemes and so on. And of course, it's not. I think now it is not an ideological maxi thing. It's just empirical realism that you turn skeptics. Say, okay, wait a moment. It's great promises, but we haven't seen much come out of the new. We try to understand why is that the case. And of course, one of the cases from the Austrian point of view is no matter how you define it. It's the moneyness comes from salability. It's how, when I bring it to the market, how much of a drop in the price do I have to see? And with most tokens, of course, they're very low salability, very low liquidity, which is kind of similar thing. So if the people really, and then you get the pyramid scheme like logic, you're the early people who got the tokens, you are too late, you brought it to the market too late when everyone was dropping it and so on. And it's experience. And now if you're proposing to do like the same thing, it hasn't been done correctly or so on, I'd be very, very skeptical about that. And it's not only now I think a bit of an erroneous understanding of money and money processes. There's also one separation that's very important in the Austrian school is we have catalectic phenomena and we have the larger praxeological phenomena. The catalectic phenomena are about cooperation between foreigners who don't trust each other because they are not family, they are not tribe, they don't know each other, they don't know their values, they may speak different languages. That's a very small part niche in our history where our intuitions are not at all good for that. But the importance for economic wealth are so outsized that it's really become the major field of economics looking at how to have catalectic exchange, because most of value production is going for international markets, recruiting internationally. I mean, all of us are basically cosmopolitan, and the more digital you are, the more cosmopolitan you are. It's not that you look in the pool of your communities yet, like your neighborhood. In order to get that, and of course it's very attractive because it's a long history of living in close-knit communities. So a lot of people want that, but you have to look at the trade-offs. And the trade-offs usually are concealed, and that's something really dangerous. You don't look at the value flow that's going in the communities, or it's very toxic. A lot of pseudo-religious communities are very toxic because you exchange the kind of felt dependence on a modern society with crucial, real dependence on a small community which can be abused. You call it a family, a community, but the kind of trust does not appear just like that. It can be just naivety. And one of the issues really is people not having savings, because savings, it's a lock-in for you. Like everyone is a common pool, everyone has just tokens. It's like nothing that's of value outside of the community. So you totally depend for old age on that community. You can't leave it anymore. And Bitcoin, of course, because it's not linked to a community, would allow you that kind of catalectic wealth, no matter where you go, no matter what part of the community you have. the scalability has increased so much that it's an international asset and you are free to go. And that's really a crucial thing, and it avoids a lot of the toxicity where this kind of dependence is abused by guru-like people, by naive groups, and you'd be surprised by the amount of real toxicity you have in small communities.
I have a question. I'm going to moderate here a little bit. I have a question about privacy and specifically on the Ethereum front, because it's super critical now. And we saw the takedown, obviously, everyone knows, of the privacy mechanisms that people wrote with some of the zero knowledge proof stuff. Where do you think that's going? Is there any way forward on the EVM side of these wallets? And then maybe that can also branch to, is privacy super important for the wider economy?
I'll be completely honest, I don't really know. I'm not really into Ethereum. When I started working in Wasabi Wallet, I didn't even know about Bitcoin when I started, so this is still a new thing for me. But even when I heard about the Lightning, how the Lightning swap can be a really great privacy for the Lightning things, that for me actually it was a really new thing. But on the Ethereum side, for example, I actually don't really know, so I don't want to mislead people on this side. But I mean, basically, if we can see that with the high liquidity of what the coin joins have, with this we can bring great privacy. So I think I can see how that cannot be introduced in Ethereum as well. But on the backlashes of that, or how would this be like in the future, I don't really have a vision of that, sadly.
Yeah, I know one guy that'll pick a hole into everything, and that's that gentleman over there. He'll find the way. But I think privacy is probably the most biggest. Everyone talks about Ethereum being, it's not decentralized and proof of stake and this, that, but I don't think that's the biggest attack vector at all. It's the fact that any time you spend it, everyone knows everything that you have all the time, and it's very, very not just dangerous. It's dangerous on a personal level, especially because if you go traveling and then you pay someone and then all of a sudden they know that you've got some valuable artwork that's valuable at the moment, they'll just go beat you up, take your phone and force you to look at it and grab everything. It seems ludicrous that there isn't more push towards privacy. And, in the early days when I was trying to interface with the banks back in 2014, saying, why do you take Bitcoin? Even with Bitcoin, they said, it's not private enough. So the legacy banks also want privacy. And so if Bitcoin's not private enough, which obviously it isn't nowadays, especially with all the software and chain analysis, the privacy on Ethereum is just dog shit. It's just insane. It's insane.
Okay, then I throw back the curveball back to you. Do you have any vision about this?
Well, I do believe having contracts that are wallets and being able to have zero knowledge proof, something there and what the guys were doing already that got taken down was pretty good. It was definitely a move in the right direction. And but yeah, it's unfortunate that now the states are going for the actual developers developing. It's so insane.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Joshua, and it's inspired by the famous Paul Krugman article from the New York Times, which has the famous quote that debt is money that you owe to yourself. And I think that's basically what the standard is, right? Because you take loan against your own assets and then you pay it back to yourself. So were you inspired by Paul Krugman when you created the project?
No, I wasn't. That's the last person I mentioned. Yeah, I really think it's probably one of the coolest things to come out of this thing, and I really want, I see Bitcoin maximalists
all the time. I come from that, you know, being early, surrounded by these guys. I'm also surrounded by gold maximalists. I launched the first Bitcoin physical gold exchange. And I see this sort of thing that's ridiculous where gold bugs missed out on so much opportunity because they refused to see that there was a possibility that there was these things called rare numbers and you find them into existence and spend them rather than borrow them. And on the other hand, you have Bitcoiners saying gold, it's a pet rock, it's crap, no, and they reject all ideas of having a physical asset that might be valuable. I can understand both sides a little bit, but I feel that the Bitcoin maxis are doing the same with other technology that might help. Yeah, they might not be perfect, but fuck, man, we've just lost billions and billions for constant centralized exchanges. We have this thing, these decentralized exchanges without order books. It's a fantastic thing to be invented, and we need to embrace each other more and stop fighting. And I think the debt against yourself is just beautiful. And you know, I really hope that we can build more bridges amongst Bitcoiners and Ethereum people. And I see things helping each other. For instance, a lot of the people that went over to Bitcoin Cash, because they were sold big blocks as the answer in layer 2's shit house, they're now going over to Ethereum and going, oh wow, they're not fighting over there. They're just creating L2s and going, oh wow, and they're competing and they're creating L2, and they're competing. And then they're going back to Bitcoin and going, oh, Lightning makes sense now. I understand why L2s are interesting. So, yeah, I think competition is beautiful, and Paul Krugman.
He also wrote the article about the babysitting tool.
Did he? Really?
Josh,
Yes.
I have a question.
All right.
You're obviously a big fan of privacy and decentralization. The standard's going to be awesome. Arbiter, right?
Yeah, we're launching an Arbiter, and we're looking at the CK EVM stuff.
What I personally find very interesting is Blochain and Rune, where you can do like cross-chain swaps and stuff. And like, how could you like incorporate like a deposit of, for example, XMR to borrow against XMR set? Like, could something like that be possible? Could that like, because you can't really spend Monero like many places. I mean, not places, but
Yeah, I mean, right now it would be about bridging and trusting those bridges. I think the real focus needs to be on trustless bridges. Bridges right now are freaking scary because they're honeypots and like super large, and usually they're trusted. So a focus on trustless bridges is a very, very difficult problem to solve. But
I mean, there have been so many bridge hacks in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this seems to be one of the sweet spots, like to grab money, but also like a very important problem to have like trustless cross-chain swaps.
yeah, maybe oracles play like trustless oracles play a role where they can execute contracts by watching other contracts on other chains or something like that. So you can have almost like I don't even know what to call it, but we definitely need to look at that for sure. It's but privacy is XMR is still very good, but
Tornado Cash, not so much anymore.
well, yeah, but the technology's there. It's true. Like Tornado Cash, it's not like there's plenty of clones out there now, you know, and it's just the zero knowledge mixers are great and important. And it's not just for drug dealers. If you run a business, you don't want your customers to know where you source your goods from. Customers will just go around you, and you don't. You know, there's plenty of reasons why you need privacy.
Question for Josh. I watched your presentation on the stream, and I just want to say well done to all the conference people for presenting that. Really remarkable turnaround. But it's sort of cut out during the demo, and we're just getting to the bit where I understood the bit about loaning to yourself and having to have a certain capitalization of your assets. But you were about to say, let's say you want to loan yourself the Argentine peso as an inflation hedge. How would you use a stable coin for that? Or you said there were a limited number of assets you could loan yourself at the moment. How would that work? Like I said, I missed that bit. Could you explain that in a little more detail?
So fundamentally, your question is how do the stablecoins stay stable?
Well, no.
Tied to the.
Is there an Argentine stablecoin? I'm not even.
Not yet. Like this is planned.
Okay.
So it's coming soon.
So it's an idea.
Yeah,
it's a brilliant idea. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, what you're doing is you're locking up more value than there is in the thing you're pegging to. And if the peg slips, the people that have borrowed against themselves are like, oh wow, I can pay my debt back even cheaper now because it's deep pegged down. So they'll go and buy that up, creating demand, which will lift the value. More demand lifts the value back up to peg that thing. So yeah, we don't need interest. Like Maker manipulates an interest rate that's variable, so you never know what interest is going to be in a few years' time.
Is Simon Dixon aware of this project?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to him about it a little while ago, but I'm not
It
sure.
would be an obvious source of funding.
Yeah, I mean, he really suffered from centralized lending problems. Why are we using Celsius for God's sake? Yeah, they're all decentralized. No, they weren't. They were just taking those funds and lending them out. So all of these centralized lending platforms are ridiculous. We shouldn't use them. We've got the technology. We've got the ideas. We should be using them.
Josh, you're assuming that you can exchange the S peso against the paper peso or bank peso to do your current expenses? Right?
Eventually, but the first step, there's concentric rings. The first step is to trade with other tokens in space, maybe DAI, maybe USDC, that are more liquid. And then as that grows, that liquidity, maybe people will hold it and be paid in that eventually. But in the initial phases, it's about being liquid enough to trade with something that's accepted in a wider economy. And those concentric rings move out and out and out until you become useful everywhere because everyone knows S-Euro and just use that.
Well, we've seen a lot of stablecoin projects fail because that's why 110% is very low over-collateralization.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to experiment with how that really work.
Well, it's about having really quick liquidate. Like if it goes below that, it needs to liquidate straight away. There needs to be buyers that will burn that amount of debt and receive those assets in that moment. And that's really where we've worked hard on, is having that fast so that if the market's really tanking fast, maybe someone will be able to buy it for 1% under spot rather than 9.1, which is the optimal. But 9.91. But it's it's a tricky.
Usually, if it tanks, I mean, there's almost no price.
Right.
Why, if that's the problem?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the good thing about these pools are.
With Tether, at least, I mean, for the large scale, you can have, get the real dollar assets out. So it's like this fully.
Well, it depends.
Still majority mismatch, but
yeah, like
stable coin.
The biggest issue is the biggest issue is these pools are a lot more efficient than order books. Because order books, the price can, they're funnily enough, they're more efficient, but the price can run so fast away from these pools. They're not as efficient, but it makes them more efficient in terms of time. So because you can go in there. The problem is if the blocks are full and you can't make that trade, there you run into the problem. So
make it more attractive.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Trap.
Yeah, but so capital efficiency was the catchphrase of Luna. Which was like, we don't need any collateral, we're just going to back our stable coins with our own crap that has no value, and we're going to print more. If those that don't know how that worked, let's say, I think it was, Luna was 50 cents each. They would put 2 Luna into a contract and say, now you can borrow 1 USD because we've got 2 Luna in there and they're worth 50 cents. And then if Luna drops in value, to 10 cents, then I'll put 10 of those in there. Now it's still 1, and if it drops even more, they just print and print, and they made Venezuela very jealous because they could print so much. This is ridiculous because there was no true value, and I think this is what it comes down to. What you're saying is we need to back money with value, and I think what we're trying to do here is build the middle ground where we're using value that's found into existence, like Bitcoin or Ethereum or some of these things where they're effectively rare numbers, and also tokenized gold, and we can get more fancy like that. But effectively, you want to lock those assets up. You don't want to give your private keys away, and you want to borrow against it.
So I do want to speak to that point, because money is supposed to be nothing more than tracking productivity. It doesn't have to have a value of its own, right? No, as long as scarcity in the sense that you don't print more than the productivity. That's the key, right? When you have too many dollars chasing not enough productivity, you get inflation. When you have not enough dollars chasing too much productivity, then you get deflation. But if you're printing the money at the rate that you're doing the productivity, you have a very stable economy. So the money itself doesn't have to have a backing. It just has to have a declared value that everybody accepts within the economy. Right? So if a community is creating the money at the rate of productivity, so for instance, if they're going through this process, at the end of one of these deliberative democracy processes, usually it's a project. It's a project to clean water systems. It's a project to fix roads. It's a project to do whatever. Once the community has accepted that project as a valid community project, they create the amount of money to pay for that project. And then, so therefore, you're creating the money only at the rate of productivity. Nothing gets out of control, nothing goes wild at that point.
Do you think there's a chance of, because, SEO is pegged to it's a synthetic asset that's pegged to the euro, right? But I really love the idea of maybe pegging to a happiness index or something like that as well, for one of the tokens maybe. And yeah, so the state, some sort of community or a country could give a questionnaire about how happy you are at this day. The happier you are, the better we're doing. I don't know. It's just weird hippie talk here. But
the more tokens are minted, the
right.
happier you are.
Well, not more tokens. Just the token is pegged to the quantitative value of the happiness.
So depressed people go bankrupt.
Yeah, depressed people. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Or currency, like giving out antidepressants.
Yeah. Oh well, that would just make it very silly.
I mean, you can endlessly debate what is money and what should it be and so on. The approach of the Austrian school is no, let's observe how people attach moneyness to certain goods, and let's figure out if people trust you that much to get your token or whatever. Of course, then it may look like money is just a convention and has no value of its own. It's just we define it and we have a deliberative process defining it and we get our own rules. It looks like that because as long as you have a trusted community like that, it really doesn't matter. You don't need money. You can have a ledger. You have an Excel sheet. We have this kind of reciprocity where you can never go to court because you don't go to court because we all owe it to each other. And of course, you've done your babysitting. I'd really have a bad consciousness and not babysitting your kids now, which is not a loan and it doesn't have the power of the debt because there's no executor coming in and forcing you to babysit, and that's why it feels better. But of course, if you don't have the trust, you can assume it, you can produce it, and usually then it's when you have the scams, the rug pulls, and so on. That's why we have to be skeptical based on reality and what's happened. Yeah, start your experiments with another happiness token or whatsoever. Just, don't assume that you've solved an economic riddle and found a utopian solution. It may be an interesting experiment, but I would really advise to be very skeptical about thinking it's like money is one thing and we just have to figure out that one thing and impose it on everyone, and that would be the worst kind of thing. And that's when you have these large-scale community ideas, like one politician in a nation assumes, oh, we have now the power to imposed a kind of experiment because we're one community and they're deciding top down what kind of experiment it's supposed to be, and then it's really bad and it's not a decentralized trying out and realizing that most experiments will fail and have failed. Almost every communities and money experiments have an even worse track records than startups. And startups are terrible because, of course, the majority of startups fail. But with communities and money experiments, not only the majority, like 99% fail or something like that, not wanting to make up something. It's just, I mean, you have to be humbled by the realistic track record experience and that.
But you have to know what has caused those failures, right? Most of the failures is because it's a small group or a singular group that has created the money for a larger group. So therefore, people don't trust it. That's the problem with 20,000 altcoins. People don't trust them, so you don't see massive, huge adoption. Even with Bitcoin, people don't trust it because they don't understand it. They didn't create it. But when a community creates its own money because it studied how that functions, it tailored it to how that community operates, and then in a referendum, it accepts it because it works for the community, then you have an instantaneous economy. People accept it because they built it, they trust it. And money is all about trust, always. And to say that most of these fail, like I said, there are over 4,000 that I studied, and many of them are running today and doing very successfully. You should study this. You should actually look at this. I'll send you some fantastic books on the subject because I think you haven't read them. So you might want to read them. You might want to actually go and see these in action. And they are functionally brilliant. But again, their biggest problem is usually scalability because it's one group trying to convince the larger group to accept it. It's better when the community does it for itself.
No, moneyness is really important when you have trust issues, not when you have trust. It's the complete opposite. It's not like money is trust. No, it's because trust has scale issues. It's very hard for us to track reciprocity with lots of people. It becomes the larger the group, the less likely the homogeneity. And the kind of bonds that you develop intuitively towards your family, towards your friends, usually people who share values, share interests, and so on. And that's the reason for that the larger, the more dense societies, the more you have trust issues. And that's why Bitcoin is supposed to solve a trust issue and be trustless. That, of course, is the main reason for the whole thing. So
one of the things about most community currencies, and so I tried to start 2 community currencies when I first studied this back in, oh my God, early 2000s, I think it was. No, it was earlier than that, late 90s. We tried to start 2 community currencies on Vancouver Island. And we did so because I realized that credit-based money systems like this would actually have a positive impact. And the ones that I studied were brilliant and were doing a great job. Ithaca Hours in New York, Berkshire Dollars. I mean, they're all over the place, right? But again, usually small groups trying to convince a larger issue. But these community currencies actually do get adopted and spread widely. Now, I actually collapsed the projects because we couldn't secure them enough. We couldn't find a way, and we didn't know anything about cryptography or anything like that. So I just said, look, I don't want to put something out there if it's going to end up doing more damage than good. Now, yes, of these 4,000 other community currencies that are out there, they're not failing because of their security issues, but I didn't want to take that responsibility personally. If I'm going to put money out there, I want to make sure it's not going to cause more damage because I don't want to ruin lives. And I wish some of these 20,000 altcoins would figure that out because they're ruining lives right and left. Absolutely. It's about how you get people to accept it. But what happened was they don't tend to get counterfeited. They don't tend to get out of control because the community has created this currency, again, to track productivity. It's not about getting a one-up on everybody else. Nobody's trying to outdo anybody, and they're not trying to go beyond because these are not debt-based monetary systems. Debt-based monetary systems is what drives us into trying to scam each other over and over and over again. That's the fundamental problem.
No, most of the thousands of those experiments are still around, are kind of community coupon systems. And that's, of course, not that difficult to explain why it works, why it's even a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just, it's not a currency thing, it's not a solution for money issues, because it's a very small part of the economic turnover of the community. So, of course, it's a great thing to have, but you can say we have like thousands of other community experiments going on with having things that are associated with the identity, something positive. We take things into our hands. I don't believe that you can have like a productivity tracked, community-based deliberative money, because monetary phenomena are among the most complex that there are. I mean, those are the most complex problems. So that even people who study it the whole life have a very hard time on agreeing on reality and what's really going on and why does it happen, what are the causes and so on. And that's of course one of the reasons why it's then easy to abuse trust as well, because it's very hard to keep track. And we've seen in history people are really very easily fooled. It's why almost every power to issue legitimate currency has been abused. There are very, very few exceptions. And there's they don't even the history books usually.
Rarer than the Pepe. Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. I'd like to give a big hand applause for Chris for organizing this whole thing. I've been here for every year, and it's always sensational. You always put on a great show. This is a great venue. Thank you so much. And it's nice that it's small. Some people, you know, it's nice to talk to a small group of really knowledgeable people and hear what they have to say as well, and listen, and then be able to go and take a swim in this epic ocean. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for your kind words. And now, please don't leave the room. Now, like, the best part is going to start now. 2 minutes.
'Cause I don't wanna be alone, and I'm not ready to be told all hope is gone and never will return. I just want us to be strong, yeah. I just want us to belong, yeah. I just want us to be strong, yeah. I just want us to belong, yeah. I just want us to be strong, yeah. I just want us to belong, yeah. I've been waiting for so long, yeah. I just want us to belong, yeah. I just want us to belong, yeah. I was lost, calling out for someone just to come and show me love, teach me how to function as a modern man without chemicals to fix me. I am just a shell, but the narcissistic ember keeps me holding out for something better, drinking all the pain instead of facing up to failure and stop blaming bad behavior. Because I don't wanna be alone, and I'm ready to be told I never will return. I don't want it to be over. Every night, talking in my sleep to tell you that I lied, and I was just pretending to keep holding out for someone better, drinking all the pain and
Hello everyone, I'm Dan. I do crypto songs, so yeah, I'll just kick off. Oh wait there. I'm gonna have to start this again. Sorry, it's like the wrong point. Introducing the Crypto Raptor, getting you ready for the crypto rapture. I'm gonna free you from your banking captor. Listeners rap about monetary fracture. Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. And shortly after, everything tanks. They barely gave a little spank to the ranks, and they still haven't drained the swamp of the skanks. Groundbreaking white paper thesis, Satoshi innovation ceaseless. Why Bitcoin fiat don't need this. Not onto the stage introducing feces coins, crypto alts and tech analysis, tapping up exchanges and wallets, inspecting balances. Alerts got paralysis. I'm sick of this. I need a hit of TA dialysis. Twitter feed hype perfect catalyst. One day fight for core BU or class. The strategist, I rattle this coddling philatelist. I dived into a crypto nexus. Lock one an encrypted necklace. AES 56 CBC to protect us. Cryptographic blockchain network connects us. Fin risk ridden, I pledge to hedge this. Getting peaks like Lexus, Texas. Buy dips with a weapon. Dredge this sea of shitcoin. Wait. Please let me take it to the moon where there ain't no breeze, and if the block's too big, the rate production fee, and if the fee's too big, blame crypto Jesus, POBC pounds to inspect us. The ETF hype nearly wrecked us. crypto so damn infectious. Chance flow means obscene reckless. Stock cryptos, trading reckless. Scam coins leave peeps respectless. Stop loss, take profit, price corrects us. Gut wrench trading hits the solar plexus. I inject respect back into the rec trust. Deflect the loss and collect the rest. Just DYOR and thread perspectives kept us ticking, sleeping restless. Lexicon got you flexing long soon. You'll be rapping to the crypto song. Crypto robot on automaton. Getting buy sell signals on Decepticons. Fiat fate pumped. Crypto debtless, quantitative easing, just can't respect this. All-time eyes eat forex for breakfast. Check your eyes, gold box that go in speckless. It's time to know my ICO. Go straight to Polo, I got a flashy logo. Leave out the FOMO, crypto hand solo. No time for dump, bro. Coins like YOLO, so I crack a beverage, trading leverage. Made redundant, so I can severage. I find a coin fading into beverage, while another dumps to cerebral hemorrhage. Only room for bulls and bears. When it rains it pours, when it rips it tears. Catch it out in your underwear. Rush in to stop losses on your trading pairs. This margin call got me up the wall. Now accept Litecoin in my OJ stall. If it climbs too high, then it's got to fall. I went all in, now I've ended up with bugger all. I erased the gains with learning pains. Hard forks, soft forks, dev changing lanes. Authorities threatening with chains. Myopic worldview, socio-political gains. I got all-time high on my own supply. No addition, just multiply. To the moon, next stop the sky. Back in rocket power like a Saturn V. Bag hodlers hodling, poker faces fondling. Tweet to the masses, crypto. Get back page, or scuttling. Thank you very much. Right, the next one. Okay, so this is a cover about being stuck in 2017. Account from 2014. I forgot the 2FA and I couldn't get into it, so then I had to create a new account and had coins stuck in that I couldn't get into. I couldn't get verified on the new account because it took ages. So I was basically stuck out of Polo and stuck in Polo. And this is Hotel Poloni Exia. So it's obviously got quite a long intro. Blimey. Just basically try not to keep coins on exchanges, of course. So that's it. Not your keys, not your coins, all that. Lots of lessons in all of this. But you got to get burned to learn, right? On a rant in the troll box, sad, glued to my chair. The admin's getting swamped again, so it's taken down, they declare. Memories already distant, and an email to my delight. But Polo said go check out your account. You didn't get your ID pics right. I'd been sat hodling too long, Bitcoin pumping too well. And I was thinking to myself, will I ever escape this hell? Then came another green candle, it was racing away. No more lulls in the troll box, but I heard them say, welcome to the Hotel Poloni Exia. Not such a lovely place, they don't recognize your face. Plenty of volume at the Hotel Poloni Exia, but it'll take a year to get my coins out of here. My mind is BTC twisted, I might as well do some lens. I caught a lot of shitty coins that are making me crypto friends. How they pump in the multiples, sweet nervous sweat. Some trade to remember, some trade to forget. So I raised me a ticket, please upgrade my account. And they said, apologies for these delays on ID and withdrawal amounts. And still BTC keeps rising every day. Crypto ping in the middle of the night, racing down the stairway. Welcome to the hotel, Polonia. Not such a lovely place. Plenty of fun, but it'll take a year to get my coins out of here. All my bags hit the ceiling now. I hope they're overpriced. And I said, I should have kept more of my coins on an offline device. And in the Telegram chat rooms, I moan hard about this. They said you should have got your ID pics right. They're right, and now I'm real pissed. New account earlier this year, I had lost the last 2FA. Must recall 2014 trades, all my coins stay locked away. Sorry, said the support team, without info, we can't believe. You can still withdraw to get in, I can't ever leave. Thank you very much. I'm just going to fade this one out. Thank you. Thank you ever so much. Oh. I mean, it's got long outro and need to conserve the voice. The new one, the new two. That one there. Oh, no, wait, I'm going to do that one first. That one. This song's dedicated to all the economists that told me crypto never amount to nothing. To all the kids in the troll box that I was shitting on the me on the admin that just trying to make some crypto to feed my puppies and all the other hodlers in the struggle, you know what I'm saying? Yeah! Oh yeah. It's all good, baby. It was all a dream. I used to read Bitcoin magazine, Trace Mayer, Barry Silver in the limousine, hanging bit prints on my wall. Every Saturday, chick or talk, host at dumb, heard them all. I trade my bags, my wallets popped, invested everything, sold it all in a pawn shop. Way back when I bought my first mining batch and flat cap to match. Remember URO? Ha 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 ha, whoever thought a ton of piss would ever get that far? Now Bitcoin in limelight, but scaling bites. Time to persuade, revolutionize world trade. Born beginner, no circles I was in there. Remember when I used to use fiat to pay for dinner? Big up Ace, Crisp and Nis, CryptoPath. Sherlock, this is Busan and Boyd, they do the math. Not scaling up like I thought I would, but send a payment, same chain, it's all good. You know very well what's happening soon. Let them hold us down, straight to the moon. You got some bags, but not that many. I'll tip you BTC. To up close and personal with business chiefs, and it's far from cheap. I laugh at gold with my peeps all day. Open source in the touchy way. The keep me busy, economists diss me, still they stocking up, yet dismissed. I never thought it could happen, this blockchain stuff. I was too used to business analyst stuff. Now tweeters listen close to my crypto ratios. Mine in Sichuan where the power pumps the most. Promoting progress, Drew beg for retweets to help crypto up to speak. Crypto life is the goal, putting lean steak in my little puppy's bowl. Lunches were punches, money stolen every week. Considered a geek, cause I taught computer steep. Stereotypes of a tech nerd misunderstood, and it's still all good. You know very well what's happening soon. Don't let them hold us down, straight to the moon. You had some bags, but not that many. Blocknet, Raidcoin, Radium, Stratis. Once so low cap, man, I couldn't picture this. Super widescreen, chance a green leather office chair. Got 2 dogs and a house still in disrepair. Power bill about 2 Bitcoin flat. No need to worry, man, the ROI is fat. The whole Twitter crew is bragging. Some are even saying crypto got them a shagging. Thinking back about my single card rack, now pimp AC with miners in stack. And I love to show them off, of course. Tweet every time I go and buy me some more. We used to fuss when the analysts dissed us. No heat, wonder how the experts missed us. Dump days into dump days. Now we cruising it out in the pump days. Damn right, it's crypto life I live. Mining crypto assets with an ASIC stiv, and it's still all good. This one, I literally wrote it in about a week, so I'm gonna have to look at the words, and it's probably gonna go quite wrong, so no one's allowed to see the words, so that you won't know how bad it's gone wrong. But so this is and I still I was fiddling around, so it's the first time that I'm doing it in this order, so it's even new to me. So I've just got a caveat just in case it's crap, but. It's called the return, you see, because it's the first one. It was in 2017, and so I just kind of thought I'd write something that continued on and talks about the stuff that's happened since 2017. So yeah, this is very nervous. So here we go. Listen up, the return of the crypto raptor. Pump the charts and the volume for the latest chapter. Bear markets corrections a minor factor. Remember burr and stack your sats. Yeah, took a whole shitcoins down to zero. Delusions of an investor hero. ICO founders play fiddle like Nero. So back to Bitcoin, the original hero. Much has changed since I last dropped a Bitcoin rhyme, but of course it survived the grand test of time. Shaking links to laundering and crime, and embedded asset class monetary paradigm. Bitcoin, a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash, no central coercion, escaping the banks of financial excursion. Satoshi's parting gift, a global dispersion. The internet cash-in stories of old now. Store of value, a digital gold. Against inflation, scarcity, behold Bitcoin's evolution. Progressively told, forget about fear, it's slowly eroding. Trust in mathematics and hardcore coding. Run a full node and just get downloading. Exit the banks while the printer's exploding. Bcash, big blocks, a saga untended. With Bitcoin's resilience, the market surrendered. Fake Toshi's claims eternally dismembered. Satoshi's enigma forever dismembered. No 2x defeat was a mere distraction. Community reject like allergic reaction. Cheap forks burn out, weather into fraction. Bitcoin prevails as the main attraction. Miners the nodes at the network's heart. Attic explosion, busting hash rate charts. Proof of work backs work of art. Power is consumed, yeah, but keeps fraud apart. Excessive energy, red herring illusion. Renewables generation becomes the solution. Bitcoin security, but on the confusion. Byzantine double standard and attack exclusion. IMF capitulates, but ineffective. Bitcoin's a law, a political perspective. Institutions a pin, it's all reflective. Freedom of money, the ultimate elective. El Salvador, Bitcoin now legal tender. Central bank powers begin to surrender. Bowing down to a worthy financial contender, yet still cranking out the inflationary bender. Bitcoin remittances, borderless transactions, developing nations, P2P interactions, shaking off the image of nefarious actions, resilient against the state's distractions. Activists, whistleblowers, voice appreciation, Bitcoin a tool for financial liberation. Privacy advocates cheering its creation. For us, for the world, the Bitcoin salvation. SegWit proposed and then activated transaction malleability, eradicated Bitcoin's protocol so sophisticated, Swift and the clearinghouse so antiquated. Lightning strikes as the network glows, adoption spreads, now everyone knows. Nosters apps, transaction micros, layer 2 kicking out all the scaling woes. The advent of Taproot, a tech revolution, enhancing privacy, a commendable solution. NFTs, BRCs, a chaotic intrusion. Bitcoin's blocks place, a sacred institution. BlackRock Fidelity and more announce spot ETFs as the tension mounts. Halvening draws close anticipation mounts, reducing inflation so every sack counts. Hold your keys, all the maxis preach. For who controls the keys controls the breach. Not your keys, not your coins, an important speech. In the world of Bitcoin, it's a lesson to teach. We narrate the epoch of the Bitcoin saga through the turbulence, and despite all the drama, the FUD healing into solid armor. Bitcoin a constant in this trustless panorama. So help no coiners navigate the maze with raps and poems and short essays from block to block as my node relays. Let's toast to Mallorca blockchain days. Blimey. Had the shakes on that one, didn't I? It's like, thanks. Thanks for letting me perform again, man. I love it every year. Incredible.
Yeah, maybe we're lucky tomorrow and can listen to sound again on the boat. Okay, thank you very much. Great. Okay, and now Naomi will give a little workshop.
Well, it's hard to follow after that, guys.
So.
There'll be no jazz hands here, okay?
Okay.
Jerry Lewis went on stage and learned the piano.
Oh, okay.
That was a good.
It's gonna be esoteric economic cycles. Ooh.
I think I'm gonna just go fluid. I'm just gonna go free.
Okay. We want to.
What do I?
Andre.
To do the clicker. Where's the clicker? Just that?
Andre, we get some.
Okay. Oh, can I go back? There.
Just.
Thank you.
Also,
Sorry.
you can get it.
What?
For the
Oh yeah. Wait, where's my piece of paper? Where's my piece of paper? Nah, I don't need it because it's mostly right. Hello, testing. Okay. Hi guys. So I am talking. To be honest, it's morphed as Chris has to speak about it. Originally, he wanted me to go full on esoteric, but I thought actually you need a sort of modicum of base knowledge for it to make sense. So it's morphed, okay? Originally it was about cyclical markers and cues, which it is, because it's based on patterns. And I know that especially in the crypto and Bitcoin community, most people sort of trade, and when you trade, you look at patterns, right? Macro, bull, you zoom in 1 minute, times, and sometimes you could do a 1 year time chart. So, and also with Bitcoin and transactions, people are very aware about speed, right? More so than what we refer to as normies, okay? Because normal people sort of refer to the times as just very static, just weather, summer, it's very much the base time elements. Now, I want to say that I'm not a professional astrologer, although I do study it from a Hindu Vedic point of view. And the reason why I studied it was because I studied history, and it just became a rabbit hole. And I'm sure Bitcoiner communities are well aware of the rabbit hole syndrome. You go economics, and then you're like, oh, Austrian, and all of a sudden it's like debt. Oh, economic history. Oh, did you know the Federal Reserve was created? So what I'm trying to say is, I think even if you don't know anything about astrology, you can handle the rabbit hole. So just bear with me, okay? Now, I've got nothing to sell. I've got nothing to I'm not a missionary. I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. It doesn't matter if you believe in it. Because funny enough, I spoke at a few astrology conferences because one of my views in the astrology thing is financial astrology. And what's really interesting is I'll give them data, right? Because, you have to obviously show data. And afterwards they go, Naomi, that Bitcoin astrology thing was really interesting because it's my way to sort of orange pill and segue these astrologers into it to see patterns, right? Because we're all looking at different sort of patterns. And they say, but it's not real. And I'm like, these are astrologers telling me that Bitcoin isn't real. Do you see my point? So sort of it's like the Raheem thing of, it's all relative. You know what I mean? What reality is. Because we know that even if you try to orange pill someone, and they say, yeah, it's not real, cheers love, but I'm going to stick to my US dollar, my Swiss franc. I've read about Swiss franc. And this is how it goes. But the thing is, we know that Bitcoiners are going to Bitcoin and coders are going to code, and we're still going to come to these type of conferences so that we can sort of know that society isn't gaslighting us, right? So I want to sort of now go kind of segue laterally and talk about patterns, because the whole thing about the basic measurement of time are seasons. So a long time ago, cavemen would be like, wow, around this time it's really hot. right? And then it's like fall, and then we became more advanced with patterns. And so everything is about pattern, whether it's art, and we know this because I'm sure many of us know it's about the Fibonacci cycle, etc. That bleeds into everything. But one thing that I've noticed with the Bitcoin community, and this is something that since I've actually been meeting Bitcoiners in real life, like through meetups and conferences, is that you know, we live in bubbles, don't we? So what's really normal for the Bitcoiner is not normal for you know our grandparents who still won't buy Bitcoin, etc., what have you. But the problem is the bubble is such that right now with Bitcoin, if you look at it from an anthropological point of view and step back, it's either coders talking to each other and going, duh, right? Can you believe it, right? And people who are like, what is Tor? And it's really like fragmented into sort of really disparate tribes, let alone the whole Bitcoin Cash and the Ethereum. And even in the short history of cryptocurrency, it's unbelievable the concept of time. Usually this kind of fragmental tribal warfare would take thousands of years, and yet in the crypto space, we've managed to branch off into segments in literally, what 14 years, 15 years? I mean, I know some of you are going to be like, well, there's Chomi and Cash, but there was a lull until Bitcoin, right? So I want to actually just ignore this because this is really boring, and you know, I had to follow Crypto Raptor, and we all want to go to the pool. So I'm just going to get to the main point of this. There's this book that I really want you guys to, if you have a chance, because I think it's one of those lateral things that really help in people who are coding. And I say this because a lot of coders think, well, Bitcoin is code, it's static, thanks, but you don't need to tell me what colors to put on my wallet or whatever, you know, my mixer, because we don't need normie marketing. But there's this book called The Pattern Language, and it was written by an architect called Christopher Alexander. Basically, he looked at the patterns, okay? So I'm just going to give you just a succinct example, so you think, well, now you're just talking esoterically, can you give me an example? Fine. Architects, when you look at a house, the science of a house, right, of anything is, what makes it sellable? Why do you feel at home here? You know, it's the same for walls. It's a window. Like, why do you like certain architecture? And you're going to say, well, it's the colors, and I like round windows. Well, no. The thing is this. There was a window seat. You know, window seats for people who don't know, it can be anything. It can be on a staircase. And they did loads of studies on this. So they like show houses. And when you buy a house, you know, you do the tour, and the estate agent or the video cameras would see how people react to this window seat. And if you made a window seat which was 14 inches, which is about, let's just say, 30 centimeters, people would be like, oh, wow, and they'd look at each other's partners and go, God, wouldn't it be lovely if our kids sit on this window seat and read a book? And they go, yeah, it would be really nice. And then they just move on, okay? But when you make that same window seat 2 more inches wider, 16 inches, guess what happens? They go, God, this is a really nice window seat. And they actually sit down. And the percentages of people who physically admire it and think that they're going to use it versus people who actually sat down during that first run through the house was like 80%. Like, it was like beyond, you know, it's like you don't even have to do data analysis, okay? It was like obvious. So what I'm saying is sometimes even like a 2-inch differential can make such a big impact. And I say this because, for instance, I like NFTs, and in the Bitcoin space, I know that a lot of coders and a lot of people in the culture dismiss NFTs, and that's fine. But I just kind of want to, from a normie perspective, who's not a coder, want to say, do you really think that people are choosing Ethereum because they think their code is better? No, it's because OnCyber is on there. It's easy to use. I don't have to worry about Bitcoin only. If you go to OnCyber, for those who are on NFTs, OnCyber has all the chains except Bitcoin. And when I talk to like the devs, a few devs that I know in London and the Meet, I say, can you not help? Because you may not like NFTs, but for people like me, and I want to onboard my friends, they need to go on a fun, something that matches other wallets like OnCyber. And they don't see the point. And then right now, the only wallet, one of the only wallets is called Free Wallet, for those of you who know. And it's the most static interface. Because from the Bitcoiner point of view, who actually developed it, they're right, it works. It's a link, You can see the verification of your ownership on the blockchain. What's the problem? The problem is it's a thud. You know what I mean? It's literally like drop, and they expect it to be fun. So I'm just saying, like, there's something about the cyclical sort of and pattern thing with whatever you kind of approach. It'd be nice. Okay, so I'm going to get to the astrology thing, though, that I do kind of want to point out. The reason why I say this is because the culture lately is, okay, we're hitting Federal Reserve time again, and it's going to be $1 million, I'm done, I'm out, I'm going to retire. Okay, that's completely up to you. But I got to tell you, even if Bitcoin does hit £1 million or whatever, some astronomical number, it's not the time to leave in the next 7 years. The reason is this. I don't know if you can see, actually, hold on, I'll just come over here. You know, this is like one of the standard trading things. It's one of the time cyclicals, right? So I'm going to get to it. I'm just going to give you examples. But right now, we're about here. And what I mean by that is there are 3 different divergent things that all overlap into one springboard. Sometimes life is like this. Sometimes, you know, you go to bed, you know, you have a cup of coffee, you go to work, you come back, you watch a show, and that's it. And some days it's like, you get up and, you know, you've got this email that says that, you know, you've won the lottery, and then you go out and you see your ex but you're looking really good, and you bump into them and they're like, actually, will you marry me? Do you know what I mean? There's some drama days. And right now, we're going to get into a drama day where things are just happening, overlapping, whether you believe it or not. I'm just going to give you data, but I'll be quick about it because it's laborious, but I put some examples there for you to see, okay? Pluto in Aquarius. Now, Pluto, it's the stem Germanist etymological thing for plutocrat. And we know plutocrats, it's like the Federal Reserve, WEF, it's that sort of thing. Now, this ingress, but Pluto goes into the sign of Aquarius every about 250 years. And these are the dates. I mean, literally went in March 23rd. It just came out back, because planets, they retrograde, which means they go back in their cycle. It's getting technical, but it will go back into Aquarius on the 21st. So show me, don't tell me. I'm not going to say this is it, but when you look at the titles, every 250 years, there's these type of things that happen. So, you know, there's Roman invasions, there's big cyclical beginnings and endings of empires that happen, okay? I can send this on the Telegram chat later, so you don't have to, but I just kind of want to bullet point for you. And right now, when you look at history, unfortunately, especially in English Google, it's always very European-based, but from the Asian point of view, you know, the Silk Road was really, really blossoming, and Buddhism was being spread. In South America, the big San Bartolo pyramid was, you know, built during a Pluto and Aquarius transgression. Okay. Even the thing about financial history is that it only goes back so far that's documented, right? This is just a little 5th century BC. It was, you know, one of the earlier monetary systems. This is also Pluto and Aquarius. So every time there's a Pluto and Aquarius thing, it seems like money's changing, or there's like a new form of money. Same here, 250 BC, Pluto and Aquarius. Alexander, gold coins, yada yada, you can read it, DYOR, but I need to point it out to you as we do this. If you look right here, because I was doing some research on even the Roman thing, even there they have like a 250, 260 cycle about the collapse of coins, or the silver, the same thing that most, you know, elementary Bitcoin talks do. So I mean, this is just, so basically each time, like I said, there's a 250 thing. And for those of you who watch Graham Hancock, in his books and his smaller talks, he also sort of refers to this era. So I'm just giving more examples of this now. So Pluto and Aquarius, for just to be simplistic, if you were at a dinner party and you don't want to obviously give the slides, what happened the last time Pluto was in Aquarius? The U.S. Revolution, French Revolution, Age of Enlightenment, Industrial Revolution, right? It was a very big springboard, whichever you want to take it. Now, I said that, you remember the half balloons? So the second balloon that we're also intersecting at the same similar time, which is a real humdinger, is Uranus and Gemini. Uranus and Gemini happens once every 84 years. And each time this happened, I put down, Adam Smith wrote Wealth of Nations. There was like real philosophical things that were at the time seemed like, oh, it's just this guy, he's a bit of a nerd, but actually that has made lasting impact. So the reason I want to spread this to you is like, even those 30 days where you guys go, God, is it worth it? Like, can I be bothered? Actually, be bothered, keep going, keep slogging. You know what I mean? Whatever you do will have impact. This is sort of an empirical way of saying, go guys, keep working, okay? And the last time that Uranus was in Gemini, 1943, what happened? Modern cryptography happened. Turing had the personal digital computer. I mean, Roswell happened. And once again, I can keep going into history, but every time Uranus is in Gemini, there are big things about not just money. And so I gotta be honest with you, we've been talking about CBCDs. And game theory is such that CBCDs may happen, but who knows how it's gonna play out. But unfortunately, the astrology is predicting CBCDs, okay? And so, like, I've just given some more examples of the type of things that happened in 7-8 years but as you can see, it's all about either medical advancements or there were so many computer things happening. The negative thing is there was a lot of atomic bombings, or there was a lot of bombings. So, it's not all hunky-dory, okay? And there was a lot of astral stuff. Oh, by the way, here, there was meteors that landed at be like no news, but Uranus is in Gemini. The third thing that's coinciding with the other two cycles, that is also happens once every 65 years, right? So it's really momentous historic times, is the Neptune and Aries cycle. March 2025 it starts, but I'm just letting you know now. This one is about the mind, but as we know, it all starts in the mind, right? Especially the United Kingdom and Scotland. Scotland seems to be very affected by this. And Scotland, in a modern thing, is important because Scotland is reminiscent, and the reason why the EU is really triggered by Scotland is because it is very parallel to the Catalan-Barcelona sort of structure in Spain. I have a feeling that this Scottish principle of being part of a union, coming out of a union, they may leave the union and it might spark another sort of Brexit, if you will, or it might be the dissolution of the EU, because, I mean, that's going down. But also, there was a lot of isms formed during the time, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnessism. I know vegetarianism in India has been going on for thousands of years. In the West, the Vegetarian Society formed, for instance, right? So there's a lot of new philosophical sort of ideas that, we've already heard about this conference. But I think that thought and philosophy is something that should be kind of nurtured and sort of juxtaposed, taking a break from the coding and the working to sort of have a think, meditate, think about how you want this to go, because things really will have a lasting impact. And another thing about it is civil rights and slavery, because last time this happened and Neptune went into Aries, the idea of slavery being bad as a human concept was real. The Civil War happened around this time. The individual sovereign, idea being powerful came to this time. Because right now, we are kind of going through a dip. We're kind of going through a real plutocratic stage where, is it really one person, one vote? The EU also reflects this sort of weird blocked, economic and democratic, political timeline and shift, right, and drop down. So when you look at other things, I'm thinking civil rights, human rights, it might be reorganized. And basically that's it. So I went a bit fast, but I just wanted to highlight things. And thank you. Bye.
Hey, anybody have a question for Naomi? You all want to go to the beach, right? Okay.
So what's the exact date all of these impulses have
together? I can send you the exact dates. I have it on the slide, and then you can have a look and put it in your diary. Great.
Okay. Any more
Thank you.
questions? Okay. Josh, you? Wait.
Yeah.
Like, what are you meant to do about it though? Like, if there's like these shocking, like prepare.
Because I'm just saying, because I see a lot of people despondent and saying they're going to leave the space once. I'm just giving you an extreme example, but sometimes you need extreme examples. Even if it goes to like 1 million, you go, oh, I can retire now. I don't think you should. I think you should keep slogging and realizing that whatever we do in the next 7 years actually has a lot of impact on the future. Does that make sense? Don't just go by the beach and do nothing and chill. Keep working, keep coding, keep inventing, keep theorizing, philosophizing, writing, adding input. This is ultimately what I want to distill in people. Like, right now, it's not about money, because money's probably going to change anyway, and who knows if whatever we have is going to have any value. I'm not being Debbie Downer. I'm just saying, none of us are Mystic Mags. But there's going to be such a seismic shift. And I know every generation says, oh, every generation says that. But the truth is, I mean, you can look at baby boomers. Baby boomers have had it easy, right? No offense. Like, they just got a job at a shoe store and they got a mortgage and, then now they have a retirement home. I mean, do you see my point? But we are at literally such a seismic timeline that literally happens like once every 500 years. The reason why I say 500 years is because that 250 Pluto cycle is once every 250 years. But the way 2 of them coincide is 100, like 500. But actually, the third makes it even kind of more like almost a millennial thing. But I didn't want to get too technical. But it's a big deal, right? So I'm just saying, don't DOS, don't work in your town. You kind of do want to keep reading and working, and whatever you think doesn't make an impact. It's like, Adam Smith. He was just like writing in Edinburgh. He didn't realize that we would still be referencing him, right? So that's kind of what I'm saying. Just keep at it.
Okay. More questions? Okay, then thank you very much. And I would say, again, thank you for coming to Mallorca. And I recommend the beach, the pool, have a drink, get some energy for tonight. Yeah, tomorrow will be the boat trip. So I will post it in a Telegram group. It's like we will meet around 3:15 in Palma. Perfect. So don't be late, otherwise the boat will leave.
to be over.